All right, I'm opening. Okay, bye. Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. You were chicken in the background.
I told you I like chicken.
Eh?
Told you I like chicken.
Well, I was busy cleaning. I forgot myself. Thank you for that, Michael. Hi, Glenroy. Gosh, I sound like
Hi. How's everyone?
I'm good.
I'm very well, thank you.
Oh, good.
Right, I won't be a second.
Thank you, Lord, for every little thing. Yeah. Thank you, Lord, you made the birds sing. I want to sing along. Said I'm in no competition, but I made my decision. You can't keep your opinion. I'm just falling on the wise man communion. Thank you, Lord, for what you've done for me. Thank you, Lord, for what you're doing now. Thank you, Lord, for every little thing. Yeah. Thank you, Lord, you made the birds sing. I want to sing along.
Evening all.
Hiya.
Hi.
Look, one's a takeaway there. One's a takeaway because he's got to order food at the back of his.
Change the picture, it bothers people, making them hungry.
Thank you, Lord, for every little thing. Yeah. Thank you, Lord, you made the birds sing. Sing along.
Good evening, everybody. We're just waiting for a few more to come in. Just got a little bit of gospel reggae. I hope you like Hi, everyone.
Evening all.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just about.
Fabulous. My ear's a bit blocked, so. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm waving. I'm not even on this video. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Glenda.
Good evening. It's been a gospel-y day today, actually, so I'm looking forward to it. And El Waldo's in the house. So, so the idea for tonight. Hi, Michael, Daniel.
Hiya, good evening.
Good evening. So the idea tonight was we're talking about Windrush, history of the church, especially the Black Church. I know this can cover from the United States. I know from my own personal experience growing up. Anthony's there to do the battle as the defender, the crusader, and I'm sure he can enlighten us on some of that history from his parents. And we're going to be joined by Clive Foster at 9 o'clock.
Can I ask a question, Glenda?
Oh yes, go on, Roy.
What is Ian trying to do? What is he doing? What is that behind him?
That's the food we make on a Friday, and I thought people should see it rather than just.
At 8:30 in the evening, you've got a display of food. I hope everybody's eating their dinner. So I haven't.
Well, we'll start, and I'm sure he will. He can enlighten us as he's one of the team on a Friday when we get down to the Soul Kitchen in Preston. What are you eating there?
Pancake.
So
I'm in the attic, so I decided to bring something up to eat because I've not had my dinner yet. A pancake, and then he's got rid of it. Oh, well done, thank you, Ian.
well,
My
fantastic.
pleasure, sir.
And I think the subject for tonight as well, falling in line. You mentioned as well, Glenroy, about the 1st of August. I hope you can enlighten us a bit about that tonight, linking it in. So I'm going to start with, as always, in my left-hand corner, plus the fact he's always first in. And I've got someone raising their hand before I introduce Ian. Buddy, good evening. Got your hand up? Buddy Laria? Can you hear me?
I'll see you.
He's got his hand up. Okay, we'll wait till he comes on. So basically, like we always do, we just start by everybody introducing themselves. We do like to see you on camera so we know who you are and see your beautiful, beautiful selves. But of course, we understand if you don't wish to be. That's why we have it free talk. Hi, Julia. So I'm going to start with Ian.
As always, as you may have gathered, I'm a photographer. I love taking photographs of the stuff we do, and I think it's a brilliant way of getting stuff over to the community. And I mean the whole community, not just Black community. I mean, every, you know.
Yeah, just in a Zoom meeting. Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if anybody in the Preston area has any ideas that you want photographing or anything like that, let me know.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Buddy, can you hear me? Welcome to Preston Windrush Conference, Free Talk. Can you hear me, Buddy? While he's getting his audio sorted, Sam's eating tonight as well. Sam, could you introduce yourself? What are the cashews? You're on mute. Mike? While we're waiting for Sam.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, go on.
I'm Sam. I'm a veteran to this meeting now, and I'm again to listen to Anthony and Glenroy's debate.
Getting braver and braver, Sam. Getting braver and braver.
Yeah.
Welcome again. And if anybody is, well, I know some of you are from Preston. Sam, he used to say Windrush victim. Now he's a Windrush pioneer. He's also one of our Windrush chefs. So he does the fried dumpling and the
Fritters. Saltfish fritters.
Saltfish fritters. And
Fritters. No, not fritters, fritters.
Okay. And he does over 150 fritters every Friday. Yeah, so you can imagine him.
And 200 dumpling.
And 200 dumplings. Okay, brilliant. And he's part of our Windrush community response team as well. Mike, would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you, Sam.
Is that me, Glenda?
I was looking for Mike Balshaw.
Sure.
But you can introduce yourself, Michael.
Okay, while we're waiting for Michael.
Yeah.
So good evening, everybody. My name's Michael Dawkins, also a Prestonian. So to introduce myself, African heritage, born in Jamaica, of parents of Jamaican heritage also. When I say I was born in Jamaica, came to the UK when I was just under 4 years old. So I do consider myself as one of the Windrush generations, because obviously the issue with immigration law affected me, because at some point I had to get my naturalisation passport, British passport. I also, when I left the country, had issues returning into the country before I got my British passport. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, and welcome again. Welcome again. I think you're getting addicted to our conferences because
I am. Yeah.
Fantastic.
People may notice, so I've been watching, and I might have to come off video and mute myself at some point because I have got a few things to do during this next 4 hours.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Fantastic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mike, are you ready? Can you unmute yourself? Oh, let me try and do it for you. Unmute. Okay.
Hi, I'm Michael. This is my 4th meeting.
You're one of us now.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And yeah, I'm learning all the time. I look forward to the learning all the historical things. I've been doing some of my own research as well to butt up with the information that I'm getting off mainly Anthony, but others too, Glenroy and what have you. So yeah, and I look forward to showing you the kitchen tomorrow.
Oh yes, yes. Oh yeah, tomorrow.
You're not going to forget, are you?
No. 3:30. I've got it. 5-star kitchen. Brilliant. Good evening, El Waldo. Would you like to introduce yourself to this glorious panel tonight? Guests.
Hello, my name's Alder Romeo. I am the chair of Windrush Action in London. I think my story's been told so many times in the past. But yes, I'm a Windrusher. Shouldn't have been, but I am. So just glad to be here.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Good to see you here. Marie. Always looking very... One of me. We're like sisters. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, good evening, everybody. And looking forward to today. I live in London, in Hackney. Was invited to these debates, conversations by Stephanie. Is it Stephanie? No, Paula. Paula. Yeah, Paula Campbell. Learning lots and lots more to learn. And looking forward to, as somebody else said, the debates between Glenroy, Anthony and Julia.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Glenroy.
Yes, greetings everyone. I'm going to come on in future, cameras and microphones off, and put in my name as A. Brown, and then Anthony can be Anthony Brown. Confuse everybody even more. I'm a train driver on London Underground. I've worked for the industry 40 odd years now, 41 years, goes in my 42 years now. I'm a trade unionist on the RMT Railway Union. I'm also the secretary of the Black Solidarity Committee and secretary of the Global African Congress, which is a reparation organization. You've asked about the 1st of August, just to say that's being coordinated by the March Committee. They're obviously also concerned about COVID-19, but other organizations have marched. I'm a little disagreement with that, but the March Committee has decided this year to hold a static event in Brixton. They said 7 o'clock, but I've seen 9 o'clock somewhere. But it will be throughout the whole day, 1st of Messiah, 1st of August, where there's going to be a lockdown in Brixton, which is part of the reparation demand that goes on all the time. I'll just take a quick chance to plug the RMT, my union Home Reparation Conference, which is on the 23rd of August. And I'll send information as we get nearer to that date. It's the same date every year. It's the date that the 80 revolution has started. Anthony said it was the only successful. I don't know if you said that. I think that's
yes, I did.
Anthony. Just to say, obviously, that's not the case. They were all successful because they went towards building the pressure and imperialism to end enslavement. The difference with Haiti was out of that, they created the first African government in the Western Hemisphere. But I think all of the rebellions were successful, even if it's somebody hiding the enslavers' clothes so they can't get up in the morning, or hiding their whip. The reparation is a reflection of all of those sacrifices that people have made that require some address. And as I've said before, it's been declared a crime against humanity, which means it cannot end until a resolution is resolved and the victims and their descendants are happy with that outcome. So yeah, looking forward to discussion on religion. I have to say I have a history with religion. It's not an ongoing relationship, but I understand it. I respect people's right to it. But Anthony always gives me so much things to disagree with. So I'm sure I'll find some more today. All right. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a great introduction. Julia, and good evening, Clive. We will come to you shortly. Good evening. Julia?
Good evening, everybody. Hi, Glenda. Hi.
Before.
Julia Davidson from Peterborough, ex-councillor for 8 years to the local authorities, and Windrush activist and Peterborough campaigner, or campaigner and leader, as they like to call me now. So, hi, everybody. I'm looking forward to I'm going to call it the Clash of the Titans tonight between Glenroy and Anthony, and I want to be the you know, when you go to a wrestling match and the woman walks round with the I'm sorry I haven't got a bikini that I can embarrass everybody with tonight, but I'll hold the scorecard up. Don't you worry about that. Okay. Looking forward to tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Going on to Buddy, can you hear me now? It's Buddy's first time. Buddy, as soon as you can find your audio, if you've got any problems, message us in the chat room. I'm going to ask Jen if she can help me with the chat room, if that's okay. Yeah. I meant to ask you before. Yeah. And Julia, as we've got some, and Marie in the as admins.
I say, Jen, Buddy is a GAC reparation activist from Barbados. So I'm not sure. I think he's currently in Barbados. So that's where he's linked up from.
Fantastic. Thank you for saying that and sharing. Colleen, welcome. Thank you for lunch today. You're on mute. I've unmuted you.
Hi, my name's Colleen. I'm a good friend of Glenda's. I'm also a supporter of the Preston Windrush Generation, and I also help out with the cooking as well. I work at university at UCLan, and I'm an assistant there. I'm part of the Preston Carnival committee. I'm in a samba band, and I look forward to listening to everybody's thoughts and views on this weekly debate on Tuesday. And that's me.
Thank you, Colleen.
All right, you're welcome.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Claude, welcome.
What's up? How you doing?
I'm all right, sweet. You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Can you introduce yourself, just in case anybody
um,
doesn't know who
yeah,
you are?
I'm Claude Hendrickson. I'm from Leeds. I'm one of the national Windrush members, along with Anthony and Glenda and many others that may be here. Can't see everybody, so many screens. My thing about Windrush is, yes, I want to ensure that individuals get their compensation, but I'm also pushing to ensure in some way, shape or form, some of the Black communities that were badly handled over that period get some form of compensation as well for community organizations. So I'm really in and about a lot of good work being done around compensation for individuals, but I think communities need some compensation as well. I'm interested in hearing the debate tonight. Religion is a contentious thing, and it's maybe had more bad to do to the Black community than it's done good. So I'm waiting to hear the onslaught.
Fantastic. Thank you. Where am I up to? Mark, good evening. Mark Worley.
Hi, Glenda.
Hi, would you like to briefly introduce yourself? And
for those who don't know me, I'm Mark. I run Mark's Preston Projects. It's basically event management that deals that can do organise seminars, conferences, outdoor events, and things like that. If ever needed, yeah, I'll do. I'll do with that one.
Okay, and how are you involved with Preston Windrush?
I help out on a Friday with you guys in the Creative Works Preston.
Thank you. Thank you. And I've known him a long, long time since doing stuff. Brilliant. I'll come to Clive and Anthony right at the end. I have a number for this lady. I know you came before, and I can't remember your name. I'm sorry. Would you like to introduce yourself? If you can hear me. Okay, while we're waiting for her, Jen, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi, I'm Jen.
Can't see you.
Okay.
Sorry. There she is.
Hi, I'm Jen. I'm from Preston. I've just I got involved in the Windrush Generation group. Was invited here by a friend Sueli, and I'm especially interested because my boyfriend's dad came to the UK around the 1950s from Grenada. So I've become really interested in knowing more about the history. If anybody's interested, I've done a summary of Wendy Williams' Lessons Learned review, and then I think about a week ago, the Home Secretary Priti Patel gave an update on the how the Home Office will implement the 30 recommendations. So I've just done a summary in a PowerPoint. If you'd like to just have a gist of how the Home Office is going to change and improve future policies for the Windrush generation, then I'd really advise having a skim through. I can put it in the chat if people are interested. But I've really enjoyed making some really good friends here and learning a lot from everybody, and really happy to meet everyone.
Fantastic, thank you.
Oh, Jen has also been writing letters. Jen, you should mention that.
I was just going to say the same thing, but I think you can speak about that. Maybe you can when you introduce yourself. Jen,
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks to Anthony for mentioning that. He's been writing letters. Well, we've been writing letters as a group to our MPs. So my MP is Mark Hendrick for Preston. So if there are any Windrush pioneers in Preston that would like to sign this letter or send it to their MP, I'd be so happy to post it here on the chat. And we've had a response from the MP, and we've written back. So we kind of meet once a week to write letters back to the MPs, and I feel that there's motions, there's good movement going forward, and also Julia in the group has written and got a really good response from her MP for Peterborough. So if you're interested in letting us know, then it would be great to put more pressure on our local MPs, because the more Windrush pioneers that come from Preston, the more I think power and stronger our voices are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And moving swiftly across, Daniel, can you hear us? Are you all right, Jen?
Are you there?
Daniel, hi. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, yeah, I'm Councillor Daniel Duckworth. I help on a Friday evening with delivering the meals that everybody's cooked, so thank you for that. As I say, I'm a local councillor in Preston for Shower Green, which I have lived and born and bred in Preston for my whole life, really. Never moved. Preston born and bred.
So I've got a Conservative councillor that's responsible for our ward, and Glenda Andrew is in it.
Yes, yes. Conservative councillor.
So as I said to him when he first came to our kitchen, I said, I hope you're not here to tick the boxes, and he's never left. So welcome again this evening. Adrian, good evening. Can you hear us? Welcome again. And then we'll go on to Maddie. I don't know if you can hear me. Adrian, can you hear me? Maddie, are you all right? Welcome again.
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me okay.
Fantastic.
This is the third time I've come to listen mainly to FreeTalk. I find it so informative. All I want is just to learn, and I'm thankful to everybody who speaks today. Thanks.
Where are you from, Maddie, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'm mainly from Lancashire in general, but I've been settled in Preston for about 3 years now, working at the university and teaching Italian in the area.
Fantastic. Oh, I need to come to see you then, up in improving my Italian. Fantastic.
Anytime.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And your partner's Italian as well, isn't he?
He is, yes. Fantastic. From Napoli.
Oh, bravo, bravo. I hope I pronounced this right, and thank you very much, Maddie. Hodia Bart, would you like to introduce yourself, and welcome to Windrush Free Talk tonight?
Yeah, hi, I'm Hodaya. Good evening. Sorry, I'm late.
It's okay. Would you like to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Well, actually, I got this information from GAC. I'm a member of GAC. And they sent out this notification.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Are you in the UK, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm in the UK, yes.
Whereabouts in the UK?
I'm in South Kensington.
Okay, and do you know much about Windrush and the Windrush Scandal?
Well, I know quite a bit, and I've been on a few marches and so on.
Okay, we'll look forward to hearing from you in the evening, during the evening.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Pamela Campbell. Hi, you sweet. You all right? It's been a while.
Yeah, sorry, I've just been so busy.
I know, I know. Would you like to introduce yourself? And welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'm Pamela Campbell. I'm a friend of Joan. Joan. Yeah. And I attended once before. I found it really interesting. Unfortunately, I've just been so busy I couldn't get back. But I'm glad to be here again. And I don't belong to any particular organisation, but I'm just always very interested in what's happening around Windrush, being of Caribbean origin myself, yeah, generally what's happening to you know, Black people in this country and around the world.
Thank you very much for sharing, and I look forward to everybody's input tonight. Have I missed anybody? I know like some people might have some technical issues, but if you raise your hand throughout the evening, we're going to hold questions towards the end. I'm going to introduce Anthony, and then I'm hoping Anthony can introduce Clive. And welcome, Clive. He's been here before. Again, like I said at the beginning, we've been doing these now for nearly 5 months. Is it 5 months? And the interesting thing is that it's been absolutely a successful pleasure in doing these conferences every week. And I personally get so much from it, and I know Anthony does, and all of you do, from the feedback that we have. Tonight, we started a series a few weeks ago about Windrush, the church, the Black church, and the history. And the reason is being, it's not spoken about a lot, and we've not even touched on music yet, you know? So there has been a great impact in all our lives, I think, especially myself, growing up in the church from when I was, you know, born. And I do feel that it needs to be raised, and I don't know why it's not there. So that's why we started this series about talking about it, but taking it right back and bringing it forward. And talking with Clive and Anthony, both from, and many others, from the Windrush National Organisation, which is now is a limited company, organisation. I thought I would talk about how we can share, and then we'll have some questions later about Windrush. It's not religion, it's about the Black history of the church, the Black church in the UK, and maybe they may touch around the world as well. So, but we can talk about religion another time, but I suppose it will take on that. So Anthony, I met in 2019 with Sakina, because Sakina was told she wasn't British. And from then, Sakina started a group on Facebook because she was looking for other people around her age group or other people who'd been affected or impacted by the Windrush Scandal. We did not know anything about it, and it's taken us down a rabbit hole, which is very interesting. And we've met a lot of great friends and new people, and we're building a campaign in raising awareness, not just in education, but also in law, following Anthony and pushing Anthony down that route. And then, of course, like I said, Clive has supported us, like Anthony, from day one, and many of you here have supported not just myself, but Sakina and Preston Windrush here in the Northwest. Because like we said, when we went to London, why are we not getting this information in the North? So I'm going to introduce Anthony, and then I'm sure he, with his wisdom and knowledge, can introduce Clive, and then Clive will share his presentation. And I'm going to ask everybody to mute, and then if you've got any questions or something comes into your mind, put it in the chat, and then hopefully we'll be able to start that dialogue later. I hope you all stay for the rest of the evening. I understand if you've got to leave, but we're here till late. That's why it's called Free Talk, so you're welcome to come back in. So Anthony, over to you.
Thank you,
and
Brenda.
introduce yourself. Thank you.
So I'm Anthony Brown. I'm the chairman of Preston Windrush Generations and Descendants UK. I'm also co-founder of Windrush Defenders Legal Community Interest Company, and there we help people with the documentation to apply for citizenship or indefinite leave to remain, to rectify their legal status. And also now we're helping them with compensation. We also campaign for law reform. We want to see a legal duty be placed on public bodies to tackle race disparities. Recently, through the murder of George Floyd, we've heard a lot about institutional racism and this move to take down statues, change or take television programs off air. But also, the strangest one I've heard was that they wanted to stop rugby fans in Scotland singing Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. Now, they said it was a Negro spiritual. And what people probably don't know, the history of that song, is that during the period of slavery, that song was used as a code to let other slaves know that it was time to escape, that sometimes the slaves used to plan an escape from the plantation. So when they sang, "Swing low, sweet chariot, coming forth to carry me home," it meant that the plan was going to take place that evening. It was going to be executed that evening. And the chariot was the people who were going to help them to escape north. This was in America. And that song has stayed within the traditions, Negro spirituals in America. And I describe that as how the slaves used to use religion as a mask for their nefarious activities in terms of escaping, in terms of planning rebellion, in terms of mocking and undermining institutions of slavery and the people who ran slavery. And so that went on, the rebellions went on. And just to add to what Glenroy was saying about the 1st of August with the reparations march, it's actually Emancipation Day in the West Indies or the Caribbean. It's a very big issue. It's a very big day in Jamaica and Trinidad. It's a national day when people do various activities to mark Emancipation Day. And that comes from 1833, when the British Parliament passed the Emancipation Act. Some people say because of Wilberforce, the MP from Hull, but I say it's because of Sam Sharp and his 1831 rebellion in Jamaica that made the British Parliament decide that enough was enough. But the Emancipation Act was passed in 1833. It came into effect in 1834, and it provided for what was called apprenticeship. And slaves had to still work for free for their slave masters for another 4 years until 1838, and that's when emancipation took place on the 1st of August, 1838. So that's what the 1st of August is all about. And then on that day, there was a massive celebration in Trinidad, and that then led to the dynamics towards the Trinidad Carnival. So I'll come on to the issue of Carnival next week, because I was going to do something tonight, but I thought we'll just have the discussion with Pastor Clive tonight. And also another thing to remember about slavery is that it was actually initiated by the Papal Bull in 1452, and that made for European princes to attack Saracens and pagans and enslave them, and pagans being the Africans. And that then was developed, and various commercial operations took place, but also the church got involved because one of the things that they said was that slavery would help the slaves to be Christians, to be converted to Christians. So there was a big move to use slavery in order to convert the slaves. And with that, I'll hand over to Pastor Clive to now tell us about a bit more about Christianity in the black churches. Pastor Clive Foster.
Thank you, Anthony, and good evening, everybody. And thank you to the Preston Windrush and to Glenda and all the team for putting on these very important free talk sessions. As Anthony says, my name is Pastor Clive Foster. I'm a senior minister at the Pilgrim Church in Nottingham, where we've also set up the Nottingham Windrush Support Forum, which has been dealing with the outfall of the Windrush Scandal since April 2018. I'm also part of the Windrush National Organising Team, Windrush National Organisation, and there are many other colleagues who are on this call, like Claude, who is part of that as well. So I'm delighted to be here this evening. I'd like to just share with you some of my thoughts and experience of being a part of a black church and a little bit of the history of that from the UK perspective. And as I think as Glenda rightly says, really, we've entered into this phase, an outfall with regards to the Windrush Scandal. And even for myself, I had to check myself because I felt, well, actually, an aspect of the Windrush Scandal is the presence of the black church and the history of that, and what that Windrush generation brought over as Christians and as the black church. And that narrative really hasn't come through, and yet the experience of the church is very much a real and important part of our history. I thought it was very amusing hearing some of the comments earlier from Glenroy and Claude. I felt like I was walking into the lion's den. But you know, Daniel survived that, so I'm hoping to survive this one as I put the fleece out. But you know, I'd like to start off by saying a few things, and Anthony did a tremendous segue of the slaves and Christianity within that regard. And there's a long history here that you know, we wouldn't even have time to go into. But I was talking to a group of ministers in Nottingham, white Christian ministers as well, because hinting to what Anthony was saying about how people are responding to the current Black Lives Matters. There's lots of conversation, discussions. I've been in a lot of discussions with ministers, and they're talking about their own experience of racism. And I was in one meeting and I was saying, look, to some ministers, you know, white ministers, you created the black church. There were people who came over from the Windrush generation. They came with a Christian belief. They experienced the importance of faith and salvation from the Caribbean. There were historically, there has been these great, you can call them religious revivals and awakenings that took place across the world. That didn't escape the Americas and the Caribbean. And when we look at, some of you may be familiar with what's called the Azusa Street Revival, where there was a black African-American by the name of William J. Seymour in 1906. And the Azusa Street Revival led to a massive, in 1906, it went on for 3 years. This was the revival that led to what people commonly believed was the the birth of Pentecostalism. So I think it was 1909, Pentecostalism. And it was this William J. Seymour, the Azusa Street is based in America, in Los Angeles. And there was a great revival. William Seymour and about 7 other men and preachers, they kind of spent time what they call just waiting and praying for God to move. And they experienced the outbreak of the Holy Spirit, very much along the lines of those of us who are familiar with the text in the Bible in Acts chapter 2, where they waited for the day of Pentecost to arrive, and that God will fill them with power. And when that particular experience happened in America, that was a time where people were drawn to the church from across the America, but it led to an outpouring and a way of experiencing God, which was very much picked up by the experience in the Caribbean and other parts of the Americas as well, in terms of what's known as Pentecostalism. So the Black church is probably synonymous and known for, you may have heard this term, Pentecostalism. And what's Pentecostalism? You know, Pentecostalism is just an expression of being what, from the Christian theological doctrine, we talk about being filled with the Holy Spirit, very much believing in that God empowers the individual to receive his presence, to experience healings, to experience salvation. And that history took part and continued previously as well in histories in terms of the awakenings and the revivals of the 17th century with the Methodism and the Wesleyans and the John and Charles Wesley, the founders of Methodism from Oxford. And so there has been a history in the Christian church of a move of God. And I say that to say this, is that Christianity for the Black experience hasn't just happened in a vacuum. It has a history as well. But the exciting thing for me personally about the experience and the experience of what the Windrush generation brought over when they first came over in 1948 and in the 50s and 60s is that they came not only as pioneers expecting to rebuild the country as we know, but they came as well also very much to the country believing that they would experience and find a place of faith and worship and acceptance in the UK as well. When the people from the Windrush generation came over, we have to remember as well that a lot of them as well in the Caribbean were already staunch believers of faith. They were deep into the doctrines and the liturgies of certain parts of Christian belief. So that could have been Anglicanism, that could have been Catholicism, that could have been a Methodist, that could have been a Baptist. So they were steeped into those traditions. Anthony mentioned about Sam Sharp, who had a Baptist tradition. And so when those pioneers came over, those first pioneers came over, they were already coming as Christians, already coming with a tradition that they would have experienced already from the Caribbean. And so coming to the UK, there was an expectation in the 50s and in the 60s that they would be received into the churches in the UK of a similar stature, i.e. your Anglican church, your Catholic church, to be received into that. But as we know, the history is that was not the case. So the rejection just wasn't with the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish. It wasn't just in the housing and in the workforce, but it was also a history of a rejection of the mother country from the churches. This was very powerful, very had a long effect on the black community and the Christians and the people who came over, that like so many parts of black history, British history, it doesn't get spoken of. And as I was saying, it was only just a few weeks ago on the back of George Floyd that I was talking to some white ministers and explaining this story. And unfortunately, they weren't even aware of it. Lots of generations now further down the line weren't even aware of that rejection of the church. I mean, I can share with you, I know stories, so how bad it was, is that I know people who have told me from who came over in the 60s, they were Anglican from the Caribbean, they came over, they were gifted and talented as like an organist in the church, and they were doing stuff in the Caribbean. They would play as part of the services and everything. When they came over to this country, they came to Leicester. I know a couple who came over in the 60s, came over to Leicester. They had a written letter from a church in the Caribbean, and they would give that letter to the local minister of a church in Leicester saying, you know, I would like to be a part of this church, and I'm a qualified organist, I'd like to play. They would just be rejected. It didn't carry no weight. And in fact, they were told, this person was telling me, you just stay in the pew and that would be all right. And so we see that there's been a history of why the rejection, and it was through this rejection that those pioneers said, hey, you know, we're not going to give up on God, and we're going to create our own means for worship. And that worship began very much in people's homes, you know, in the front rooms. Yeah. And it started by, you know, just coming together where people could, from the Caribbean, came together of Christian faith and says, we're going to meet together and hold prayer meetings. we're going to, you know, bring everybody together and, you know, come over, and you know, there'll be a person who would be versed in scripture, and they would become the who would lead it. And here's another thing, very much the black church was very much born out of black women. They were the backbone of the church. They had this courage and this bravery to want to, and that's a story that's not often very much told because they were in the background.
True.
But they were very much the cornerstone. And that's why when you look at the black church, you see so many black women in church. And historically, they have been the powerhouse in keeping the families together and being a part of the development of the black church. So when these meetings were taking place in homes, and more people get to hear about it, the front room was becoming too small, and people had to make decisions to venture out to look for bigger premises. That initially in the 60s and 70s would initially start to look at renting halls or centres. I remember even in Nottingham, I heard the stories of those who came over, those pioneers, whereby they would rent a school hall, and they would set out the chairs and everything for worship, and they would conduct their services. They would create their own altars, and they would transform a school into a beautiful school hall into a beautiful church, and where they would decorate it, they would put flowers there, and it would be transformed, and it would become a place to worship God, to praise God, and to have church. And then they would have to, when the person comes around and says, "Hey, up, it's time to go," it would be time to go and close down and go. That became unsustainable as a means of worship, as a means of actually bringing community together. And so we had the development of the Black Church looking out for buildings. Now, I think this is perhaps one of the most important, as it were, developments and points around the history of the Black Church in the UK, is that the Black Church was the first Black organization to purchase buildings freehold and have them within their organization. And that was an incredible, when you think about it, it's incredible foresight from those pioneers who came over and said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to have our church, we're going to have our own buildings, and we're going to seek to obtain those buildings and to buy those buildings. And that was a means of actually having investment in the community, because the church and the building became the possession of the church. And that was something that was happening, and that was something even still to this day is a recognition of the Black Church. Now, why was the Black Church, I think, as well important? Because yes, there was we know for that Windrush generation, they had to withstand the discrimination and the racism, but also the Black Church gave a sense of, was very much viewed with a sense of pride. It was a place for organization. It was a place of identity and a place of respect. And one of the important things about the development of the Black Church is that, and I'll come on to this a little bit later, is what it gave and what it meant to the Black community and those who worshiped there and those who engaged through the experience of the Black Church. One of the first things that it gave is that is this sense of cultural identity, in that you could be Black, you could be yourself in an environment where people accepted you and loved you for who you are. The experience, let's just, if we go back 20, 30 years, the experience for, a lot of our forefathers and foremothers was that being in this country, it was very much, you knew overtly the struggles in terms of racism, and being to church and worshiping God and being caught up in that. I just apologize because my screen has gone down. I'm not sure if I've lost you, but I'll reconnect.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. I'm just logging back on. For those who were part of the Black Church, what that gave them was a sense of freedom and the joy of an expression of worship and fellowship. Gave them a sense of freedom and power to sustain them and to help them. So going to church was very much about a liberating experience to help them throughout the rest of the week in terms of the trials and tribulations that they had were experiencing, as it were, day to day. The experience of the church as well also became a means by which the Black community could develop and engage with the wider community. One of the histories of the Black Church is its sense of creating an atmosphere not only for worship, but wanting to change, wanting to do excellence as well. God was the focal point. And so in pleasing God, the importance of pleasing God and following God was important for the way that one behaved in or conducted themselves, I should say, in wider society as well. Now, one of the challenges and which we may have some discussions about is that the church as an organization, and particularly the Black church, is very organized, and some of the things which became very much a part of the Black church in terms of conduct, rules, and things will also be and I'm sure people can talk about this, were actually very alienating and very challenging for members of the Black community as well, you know, because wow, you know, so to be a Christian, you can't do that. You got to stop doing this. You got to, you know, and it was that very thing that, in terms of tradition, some parts of doctrine and practice, which was sometimes at loggerheads with other members of the Black community and wider society as well. Certain churches would be very strict on certain things. I don't know how many of you knew about you know, the whole concept of going to church. Whether you like it or not, you're going to church. You're going to get them going to church. And so some of this experience was very much, and so we got a situation whereby when people got to a certain age, and probably for Black people, that was probably when you're about 28.
Oh,
you could decide that you're not going, or you're doing your own thing. So, and there was different ways in which the church expressed itself. I want to say this as well, is that was, you know, I have to say sometimes you look back on it, you think, sometimes, you know, I would question some of the things that we've done as a Black church in some of these kind of doctrine laws, as it were. But they were done, I guess, with best intention at heart, but sometimes there could have been a lot more wisdom, to coin a phrase, in terms of how that was done. But I want to say this about what was really important as well with the Black church, is that some of the support systems that the Black church was able to do were very important for the community, for our community, and for our development. I recall many of the Black churches were the pioneers of Saturday schools, you know, extracurricular activity. Why did we have Saturday schools? Because we recognized that our children weren't performing in mainstream school and they needed that extra support. And a lot of the churches were very much involved in setting up and running Saturday schools to enable better outcomes for our children from within our community as well. Also, some of these same churches were very much instrumental in running luncheon clubs and supporting people from our own community, and so that they had a place to go, a place of a place for social gatherings as well, and all those life cycle events that happen, that the church, that the Black community to go to and feel that they'll get a culturally competent, as it were, experience. I'm talking about weddings, christenings, funerals, all those life cycle events which we all experience, but could be handled and understood through the Caribbean and African Caribbean experience as well. And so the church played an important role within the overall framework of how the Black community was viewed and experienced. I have to say, when I look back over the history of the Black church, you don't even, there isn't even a lot of information or recognition to the kind of moral fiber and Christian ethics that the Black church brought to this nation as well. you know, I mean, one thing we can sort of quickly go on to is the experience. I talked about worship. When we think of the gospel music and what gospel music has brought to the nation. If you just look at even the last royal wedding, there was an expression of gospel music. But I'm thinking about that in terms of not only from a worship point of view, the experience and the joy that has given within the church, but out of the walls of the church as well, the experience of worship through song. Many great singers have come out of the church. Many of great confidence in terms of musicians have come out of the Black church experience as well. So those are some of the wonderful kind of privileges that the Windrush generation has brought over, and that has been a legacy over the years for the Black church. There have been many opportunities for youth club developments. Many young people who have come through the church developed a sense of friendship, and many as I mentioned previously, the Saturday schools, mentoring programs, and what the Black church has given us as well, and perhaps in a way, this is another area which we haven't looked at and we need to look at, is leadership, and the leadership that was observable through the preachers, through the teachers, through those who were workers in the church, and that the church became a place where you had those skills and you could do them, and you were encouraged to do them in the best of the churches, to do that as well. And so that transformation in terms of the emphasis on reading, on singing, on public speaking, and producing scholars and professionals as well, was very much a part of the Black experience in the church as well. It's bringing us, I guess, really up to date. This is why it's even more, for me personally, and when I think of the church now, how sad it is that that same Windrush generation now are the ones who have actually been suffering and experienced the Windrush Scandal. And a lot of these people from the Windrush generation, you know, who have suffered, you know, they've got connections to the church. And it's, you know, they may not say, look, I'm a Christian or I go to church every Sunday, but I tell you what, I bet you they know an auntie or a sister or a mother who's very close to them, who's connected to the church in some way or fashion or another. And it's really important that today the church actually stands up for truth and justice, stands up and makes a stand in terms of ensuring that the Windrush Scandal never happens again, and that the generation of the Windrush and their descendants are not to be discriminated and to be victims of what has happened with regards to the horrendous hostile environment. So the church has a role still to play, I believe, in this area. But it's important to say as well, and sometimes this is where there's a tension, you know, and I'd be happy to take questions on this. The church's central role, it would say, is about the saving of the soul, preaching the message of the gospel. And by that means, bringing people to a place of faith in Christ, and then recognizing the whole person in terms of not only just the spiritual, but the mind and the body and the social concerns as well. And the church has a role still to play in that. So I'd like to leave it there in terms of a bit of a synopsis. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. I'm clapping. Fantastic. Well, my mind was like, he took me back to church. And I'm sure a lot of people have got a lot of questions. I was brought up in the Adventist church, and I'm sure Anthony's going to say something. You talked about pioneers, the women, the women like our mum, like my mum, selling magazines. Do you know what I mean? Never said to us that they were getting any kind of problem, because they still are, honestly, Sunday morning, you go to church, Friday night, I'll never forget it. I used to dread it when I got older. Friday night, sunset, especially when sunset's early and you want to watch Top of the Pops or something like that. Okay, Friday night early. And of course we had the organ. So we had the church at home. You know what I mean? We had the church at home and then we had somewhere else the following week. So I was born in it, because I was born into the church. But you raised so many things that it took me back. And also that our parents, especially our mums, were the one, because the fathers went to work. You didn't see them always at church on a Saturday, but the mother, she had you in church on Saturday, even if you were going to some friend's house, you know what I mean, and they had the service. And I think it instilled in us youngsters a sense of community until we got older, you know what I mean? So you've raised a lot of things, and I'm glad you did what you did, Clive. Thank you so much. So many questions, but I'm going to throw it out. I'm going to ask people to use the on the reactions button below, put your hand up for questions, and if you can say who the question's for, and then we'll start that way. So can we ask, who's got a first question now? As I said, Julia said, Clive, you're a breath of fresh air. Julia.
You're muted, Julia.
Oh, you're muted, Julia. Right, I've unmuted you, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, and thank you, Clive. I absolutely felt that you took me back to church. Yeah. and me and Sam will tell you all about that, because we, do you remember, Mum used to make us go twice, if not 3 times on a Sunday. So we'd go Sunday morning, we'd go Sunday afternoon, and we'd go back Sunday evening. And I have to say, what is interesting about what Clive had to say, what I notice when I go to funerals today, anybody who is old school, who went to church, and our church was Brooks's Bar in Manchester, called Sharon Church. Do you remember, Sam?
Yeah, Brooks's Bar for me.
Okay. And what we got out of that was schooling, education, and family. And that was the sense of everybody was together. Nobody saw anybody that was not welcomed or out of place. Yeah. Everybody felt welcomed in church. What I got from church was not only direction, but a joyous feeling. We sang until we couldn't sing anymore. Our throats were hoarse, but we loved it. We loved the tambourine playing. We come home, we felt good. When we come out, I don't know if Sam remembers, but I can't remember this lady's name, and she used to sell grater cakes and drops, and that
at the back.
that for me was the epiphany of going to church. I mean, if Mum said to me you were going to church, there was never an argument, because I knew she stood outside with her wicker basket, tablecloth on the top, and lift over one corner was the pink and white grater cake.
Yeah.
Opposite side was the ginger drops, and for me, you know, well.
And then, Julie, and then went over for chicken and some peas.
We went home. When we went home, food had to be blessed, and mum and dad, you know, we the kids used to sit down after, and mum and dad would sit and eat first, or mum would eat last because dad would eat first, and then mum would make sure that we would sit down, but the table was always dressed. There was always rice and peas and chicken, and after I used to steal out the condensed milk out the tin. You know,
to get beaten.
Well, I never got beaten. I was the youngest.
Get away.
Clive, you have given me so much joy from your testimony about what church should be. But going back to my question is, what is so sad that when we go to funerals today and some of those songs to send somebody home to say goodnight to is lost. So I'm the one that usually sings down by the riverside, or, you know, to just make people feel that Holy Spirit. So that takes me to that Pentecostal place of feeling grounded. And when I find myself in a situation where I feel that I'm going to be tested, that is who I find within myself. And I'm going to confess here, I don't go to church as often as I should, but that education from all those years ago has never left me. So thank you, Clive.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Sam. Ian, is anybody's got? Please use the reaction button below so I can see your hands raised. Okay, because there's so many on here tonight. Ian, I think it was. Or have I froze? Hello? Hello? Oh, it's froze.
And the sad thing is even the church I used to go to 20 years ago, which led to me leaving it, is a black man turned up and everyone was like, what do we do? What do we do? Like, and it's like the sides people came up to me and said, you're on the synod for Liverpool. You'll see a lot of black people. What do we do? And I went, you're welcome to the church. And I ended up sitting with this guy for the whole service. And I said, oh, you coming back next week? And he said, I don't think I'm that welcome. And the thing is, I couldn't argue, you know, and I wanted to say, no, you really should. You know, there's some assholes here, right? But there's a lot of nice people. But then again, when I dated a black lady about 10 years ago, no, but that's half the congregation cut me dead. And to this day, still don't speak to me. So I ended up leaving the church. So that's all I want to say.
Wow. Thank you, Sam.
Thank
you, Ian.
Yeah, just to come in there on what you just said about people leaving, Ian. In my church, the opposite of what Clive is talking about took place, in that you said that when people came over from the Caribbean, they were refused and rejected. What happened in my church is that the white members eventually all left as the black members came, and then so the whole church then became black, and you wondered where are all the white ones gone. But they'd sort of like gradually left and set up another church somewhere else, and left us with the church that they left us with. And my mum, I now say, came with a colonial mentality, because she then started organising and trying to convert her neighbours, and she became, you know, a magazine seller and a colporteur, and she set up 3 churches eventually, one in Moss Side, one in North Manchester, and one in Birmingham. And so it just always seemed ironic to me that there were, you know, Europeans coming out to the Caribbean and other places and converting and preaching and so on. And then here were these Caribbeans coming back, my mum included, converting and preaching to Europeans and setting up churches. So that was my experience. And again, like Glenda, the whole experience is quite different from how I think Europeans see church, because for us, growing up as children, it was a day that you looked forward to, because that day, you know, you started to prepare for it from the day before. Your mum would go out early Friday morning and do all the shopping and, you know, prepare the food, so you knew that you're going to have a massive feast. And I used to go to school on a Friday thinking, who am I going to invite to church? My friends. And then could bring them home for lunch. And then, you know, you spend a whole afternoon like go eating and talking to your friends. And you know, if you wanted to go back to church, you did. But so it was a whole experience for the whole day. It was about community. It was about friendship. It was. I don't think we got too much involved in the spiritual, although you were supposed to. But for me, anyway, it was more sort of interacting with people. So that was my experience.
And I think that's what you brought tonight. You brought back that
memories.
Not just memories, but the, like when I was at my mum's today, and I picked up my boombox. And I went to my mum's, and I knew I wanted to play some music before we came on tonight. And I know my mum, because for her, God is everything. I have to say that. And we, the generation below her, that's me, my children and her grandchildren are not of the same. But I think that's what she brought with her from the Caribbean, you know? And so when I got there and she said to me, "What's that?" I said, "It's a boombox." "What's that?" I said, "A boombox." So, but I know, and it's a shame because I couldn't. There's you talked about music, gospel music. My mum sings in a choir. She sang she sang to us when we were babies. So my mum was a singer. We sing. I used to sing. I was better than my sister actually, back in the day. So I know music is very key to my mum, and I'm playing the music. So I play it. And for her favourites, I don't know if anybody knows, but the Gaithers, the gospel was like, back in the day was like, and even later on you thought, well, this is a black church. How come I'm listening to Jim Reeves?
Hey, Glenda.
Yes.
Every Sunday.
And then Claude.
Every Sunday I used to sing Jim Reeves with my mum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's favourite.
Yeah, Sunday night. Polish my shoes. Must be shiny. That's true. And then come Sunday morning, my head must be nice and combed.
Wow.
I soup.
But what I was trying to say to Clive, although we're looking at history, and as I said, this is a series, I do think the church is very, very important in the Windrush history. I think it should be noted. Nobody talks about it, and I don't know why that is. But I'm really glad that, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot tonight. Claude had his hand up. Claude, and we've got a few new visitors on the page, and then we'll hopefully try and get to them. And then Claude, and then Mike, and then Glenroy. Okay. Go, Claude.
Thanks, Anthony, for your kickstart, and Clive, thank you for that. You put it over elegantly, and but like I said, that there's going to be some kickback here, a bit of a kickback.
Here comes the roar.
I think Anthony hit it on the head a little bit. Sunday became a really special day. You get what I'm saying? It was like probably sometimes the only day you got the whole family together. So it was a special day, and the food and everything that was cooked and everything, and going to church. I was in a funny Leeds, and again, I feel some of the cities in the UK dealt with it different, right? because I think the kind of church experience in different cities was different. And there's some of what Clive said I could relate to, but there was quite a bit of what Anthony said. But for me, just to give you my journey with church, my mother, when she came up here in '58 from St. Kitts and Nevis, where she was a Methodist. They had multivarian churches and various other churches in the Caribbean, right? So my point was going to be is that the religious intention they had was taught to them before they came to the UK. So they were either Methodist, Baptist, or whatever before they came to the UK. And our experience, and my mother never forced me to go to church. So the good thing I had was then I could go to lots of different churches with my different friends. So I could decide on each Sunday which church I was going to go to.
Or which menu you're going to have.
And the churches were so different. Some churches had a lot of hospitality. Some churches had a lot of music. Some churches were straight in and straight out. So I managed to go to lots of different churches. And I'd put it down to we ended up with the so-called black churches versus the so-called white churches, which were the churches that Anthony spoke about, where our parents went, and eventually the white congregation left and went to another church. So we ended up with it being a black church by almost default. It wasn't our intention. So you have two kinds of churches. One that might be a black church that was led by a black minister and black ministers. And then you'd have another church which the majority of the congregation were black, but the minister was still white. Yeah. So, and there were two different types of churches. What I did want to mention was that Sunday schools that the churches did set up, which is what what Clive said was true. But the groups coming together from the different churches helped to set up the Saturday churches. That's what happened in Leeds anyway. As Saturday churches, the Saturday schools. So it wasn't if you went, because what happened is if a congregation went to one church, they did everything with that church. They never went to the other church. So it created for me a bit of divide and rule. And I kind of see churches in Leeds, I see churches help separate people because they were Methodist. They went to everything Methodist. They went church on Sunday. They went to choir practice on Tuesday. They went to something else on Thursday, and then they went back to church on Sunday. They didn't go to any of the other churches, So there was churches for me. Created a sense of, Clive said, what did happen though, a lot of the people that helped create the organizations within our community went to church, but they didn't do it from the church. They did it as individuals outside of the church. So they might have been involved with the church, but they were also involved with the carnival. But they were from different churches involved in the carnival. But then at the end of the week, they all went back to their church. What else was I was gonna say? Oh yeah, on the back of coming with a religion that was given to most of them under colonialism, islandism was another big issue within the church fraternity, because in different islands, they may have had different religious beliefs in a fashion. So there was that, and the last point on Clive's thing was, if you waited until you was 27 to rebel
wrong there.
at church, right?
You were off at 16.
you waited a long time. Because most of my friends that rebelled from church did it in their late teens. When they were like, as soon as they were 16, 17 and got to college, or they left home so they could not go to church anymore, because if they were in their parents' house, regardless, they had to go to church. But if they got their own place, you know, they could vote with their feet a little bit. But a lot of them now, and my last piece, a lot of them who left the church as my younger generation are now taking their children to church. So it was a long distance, but now they are engaging with church. And that'll do for my bit. So I'll give you both a bit there, right?
Fantastic, thank you. I definitely brought some memories. I think it's Mike and then Glenroy, if I'm not mistaken. Mike Balshaw.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I think the black community has really enriched the church in the UK, because you've brought joy of worship. You know, you go to a lot of churches where they do worship, but they're very, you'd think they were having teeth extracted sometimes. And, you know, I think this possibly is why some people felt they weren't welcome at church. Maybe different worship styles, I don't know. You know, it's, I always say worship's like going to a restaurant. There's different restaurants, different meals, and people like to worship God in different ways. But I personally love watching the gospel choirs on Songs of Praise, and they have a competition every year, and the black choirs usually, if they don't win it, they're usually thereabouts, you know. And I thank you for that, you know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just the sheer joy of worship, you know. I mean, it's fantastic, you know. My question is actually to Michael Dawkins, and I'd like to ask Michael, did he feel welcome at our church? I worship at a Methodist church, predominantly white, and I thought Michael was always welcome. I'd like to ask him. Is he around?
Michael Dawkins.
Yes.
He's on mute and
I think he's on mute. Michael, are you there? I think he's on mute, but I think you could have put that question in there, and when he comes back.
I mean, he had black hair when he first came to our church. I just wondered if the experience had turned him grey, you know.
Well, I personally know that Ashton Methodist Church was very, as we got older, although I left, was very instrumental in, we used to have a lot of socials there as youngsters, you know what I mean? So, but I'm sure Michael will answer that question for you. Okay. Glenroy, and I'm going to just welcome, before Glenroy speaks, Anita, welcome, it's first time tonight. I can see you there hiding. Nigel, Valerie, Balrose, I just want to welcome those. Oh, Martin! Mwah, 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 mwah.
Oh.
Martin's in the house.
Good evening. Good evening. Sorry about my distraction.
Martin wasn't there before, so you've got Anthony, you've got Glenroy, you've got Claude. So they're coming. They're coming. Anyway, welcome, Martin.
Thank you.
Glenroy, to you.
Yes. Greetings again, everyone.
Ding, 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 ding.
Just to say that in Jamaica, our family owned the land that the church was built on. So we actually provided that. It was a Seventh-day Adventist church. And in Barbados, our family is also deep within the religion there. So, you know, I've seen religion up close and personal. It just never took. It just never actually made an impact on me, Clive. And the real difference between, or a little difference, Anthony and I have is Anthony has said, and perhaps he still believes it, maybe I've convinced him it's not true, that so many of the rebellion against enslavement, and it's not slavery, it's enslavement, it's something that was forced upon us, has been as a result of Christianity or things that people learn within Christianity. Well, I actually think that the rebellion led by people with Christian experience and so on was despite.
What's the sound, Glenroy?
Yeah, sorry, that was my fault because I was trying to mute some sound. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, despite the experience and the encounter with Christianity, it still led them to push an agenda of fighting enslavement. So I don't accept the scenario that somehow Christianity motivated them or pushed them forward, but it's a view that we would exchange on, I think. Clive, I mostly want to ask you about a historical period that I think, no disrespect and not a criticism, you appear to have skipped over. Because after 1833, especially in the island of Jamaica, the white Christian community were very much funded to be part of this so-called educational process of Africans who are now had enslavement, fought for it, and succeeded in ending. Instead of paying the enslaved, i.e. the demand that we're making for reparation, not only did they pay the enslavers, but they paid the church to be part of well, first of all, they paid the church for the slaves, the enslaved people that they had, and then they paid them yet again for so-called education. And all they did was try to teach them or enforce the religion on them, or created a missionary set of people that actually were used to go to Africa mainland and try to start the whole process there. So I just wonder whether you could care to touch on a little bit of that. I found what Ian said very, very intriguing, because clearly the same people who had in their windows no dogs, no Irish, and no blacks were the same people going to church on Sunday. And even though the signs wasn't at the church, when they saw black people come in, what Ian has said is exactly what happened. And therefore the racism within the church, within the European church, and the lack of security, because that's something I think is important, because I suspect there may have been places where violence were applied to those people who wanted to go and worship in white church. I have no empirical evidence about it, but I suspect, as in most parts of society, there may have been this attempt to force people not to come to church and worship, and then went to certain lengths afterwards to discourage them. So I think the way in which people started having to find, for security reason and other reason, their own church, is more about the violence and insecurity that they would have felt trying to go to white churches. So I just wonder whether you share that view. And just to say, bring it up to date, because for example, the Bernie Ground Center in Tottenham, if you go there on a Sunday, there's about 6 different churches meeting, because they have no access to the buildings and so on. These are primary Africans from the continent. And it seems to me, whereas there are a few African churches from the Caribbean, but they appear not to be linking up with the Africans from the continent to share that resource or even work together and actually be a true black church, as you've talked about. Because clearly, if you're going to just be isolated, knowing the experience that you have had and know the experience that so-called new immigrants are going through, how is it the opportunity has been missed? But more importantly, I want to touch on that historical position about the time in between so-called enslavement ending and what the role of the church were in those days. Thanks very much.
Thanks for that. I'll just come back on that, Glenroy. I think you've made some very proper and valid points in terms of the historical account. When you think back to the colonial period from 1619 through to 1770, the church did not escape that. The church was also caught up in that and corrupt. It was very interesting how Anthony started off by talking about the papal side of things. So you're quite right to mention the role of the church in terms of inducements, really. Look, the history of slavery and enslavement, I think we all know that, you know, slave owners, there were slave owners and they were Christians. You know, there were slave owners and they would use text from the Bible which says slaves should obey their masters, and they would use all certain types of scriptures to reinforce their position, and they would deny. Look, the history is that they wouldn't, some of the slave owners back in that colonial period, they would deny the knowledge and preaching and even preaching the gospel to the slaves because of the very thing that they felt they would become empowered, they would become knowledgeable, they would turn on them, and so forth and so forth. That can be replicated throughout so many things. I mean, you may see a gentleman behind me in terms of Martin Luther King, a picture I've got. He talked about even during the civil rights movement that in America, when it came to Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, you know, we may have made some progress, but that was still the most segregated hour in America because of the way that, you know, the black churches met and they couldn't go to certain areas. And so not only are you hitting a point where there was that colonial period, but it was replicated even in our more recent civil rights movement. You're quite right, and Anthony touched upon this, in that we did move to the abolition period from 1820 through to 1860. And yes, I think we know the story. You know, history is written by those who were in power or the historians. But yes, there were people of a Christian faith who were championing abolition. But I think we know that, you know, it took black people themselves to actually free themselves, really. And very interestingly, I mean, one of the great hymns of the church, Amazing Grace, John Newton, who wrote that, you know what I mean? And when you look at the text in that, the lines in that verse, you know, the Lord who saved a wretch like me, he was a slave owner, you know. And so this historical settings that we find ourselves, the church doesn't escape that. And so it's important that we do understand the history with regards to that. And I think you've made a very valid point there in that regards.
Thank you.
Can I just come back on Glenroy?
And then Pamela, after you.
He won't surrender. And I think
why?
Clive has just added ammunition for me, because Clive mentioned that when the slave masters were very fearful of preachers who would come and preach to the slaves, because if they came and preached to them, the slaves would turn on the slave master. And so, and also Clive mentioned Martin Luther King. Now that tradition of leaders within the church using their position to challenge the authorities and to mobilize people from the church came through with Martin Luther King. Also, if you look at people who didn't profess Christianity, for example, who were in leadership roles, like Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, they all came from a religious preaching background. So my point is that once you start to engage with the Bible stories in a deep way, you cannot remain a slave, because it really makes you believe that you are empowered to be equal to anyone else. And this is really what all these leaders were championing from the scriptures. And you cannot escape that. You give me any revolutionary, and by and large, I will show you that they all came from a religious background.
Thank you, Anthony. Before anybody else, I know Glenroy's got his hand up. Can we go to Pamela? Hi, Pamela.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, it's been very, very interesting. It took me back as well to childhood days, and yeah, I was brought up in the church. I mean, you know, I remember I came here when I was 8 years old, and it was just church every Sunday, like everybody said, you know. But one of the things I want to ask, or one of the things I think often about, is that it was all, you know, it was spiritual. It was, you know, we sang and, you know, we had our friends and so on, and we went to Sunday school. But does anybody else think that in some ways the church held us back because it was so strict that, you know, we didn't do some of the things that you would do, say, when you got to your teenage years. So when you finally got out of church, rebelled, so to speak, you felt that you didn't really know half of the stuff that was going on, because it's almost like you were sort of locked away from it. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so strict, the church. You know, you couldn't go to the cinema. You know, you weren't supposed to be listening to Top of the Pops, although we did. But you know, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, and yeah, you know, I just felt that, you know, I mean, now I look back on the church with some fondness, because obviously, you know, half the community was there, and when I go back home, I see them, and you know, we're all happy to see each other. But you know, I just, at that time, growing up, I don't know if anybody else feel the same as me, that, you know, it did kind of in some ways restrict us.
I think it's a great question, Pamela, and I think, and maybe because we're older now, like you said, and we see things from a different perspective, living life and experiences. I've put that question in the group, so I'm going to ask that question to you. Those of you who went to church as a young person, I think we're mostly all around the same age group. There's nobody my mum's age or older here. Do you feel going to church restricted you in some form or another? And can you raise your hand in the reaction button? Do you feel that the church restricted you?
Nobody?
I can't see anybody's hand in the reaction. Julia, just seen you. Anybody else? Just raise your hand if you've got something to add. Do you feel going to church, or the church back? Are you talking about the church back then, say in the 70s, 60s, 70s?
Yeah.
Julia, and I think Claude. I think you're on mute, Julia.
Thanks, Glenda. I don't think it restricted me. I just feel that churches today don't have the same impetus as what church today. Now, whether it's because that's a generational thing, and I'm closer to the back end of my 50s now, so it's a case of church. The church that I've been to only a few weeks ago is very much conference led, and that is in Peterborough. It's always about going off to a convention of sorts, and it's not really the grounding that I felt that, you know, me and my brother Sam had. So my impression that I keep of church, or my experience of church, which I hold dear, was very much family orientated, And I don't feel that in the churches today. And I don't know why that is, because maybe it's because the one that they've got here is a Baptist church, and I was used to either Church of God or my dad's religion, which is Seventh-day Adventist, and there are two differences.
I thought he was.
Yeah, two differences hugely, but still, it still held me. And the church that, as I say, I think I chose not to go because it didn't have the same feeling of what I think a church should be. So that's why hearing how Clive made it sound tonight was interesting, because that almost metaphorically took me right back to what a church should be. So it's a mixed emotion, because I think we all need to feel that spiritual guidance and that feeling of upliftment and that feeling of connection. And I think it's missing. But what I will say is, I think churches in itself, because of so much animosity and hatred that is going on in today's society, that churches are playing an integral role again. And whether that is the mothers, Mother Church, Mother Marcus, Mother, Martin, Mother this, mothers are saying some of our children today have lost their direction. And I don't know if that is media related or them being out in their peers, and they seem to have got this disjointed emotion that's going on. So for me, I'll hold my hand up. Churches need to come back and old school. I don't say that it needs to be as rigorous as ours when I went to school, which is like 3 times on a Sunday. But I do believe that holistic, that feeling of togetherness, and feeling that people can actually feel safe within that building is needed.
Okay, brilliant. And I know there's a lot. El Waldo, you're next. 1 second. After Claude. 1 second. Claude. And then Claude, El Waldo, because El Waldo's waving. He's waving.
Yeah, no problem.
And then, so Claude, El Waldo, and then Clive. Anybody else, please press the reaction button. A thumbs up if you agree with what they're saying, or you hands up. The hand is to ask a question or comment, please.
Okay, I'll keep it short. I agree with what Julia said on the church, or the structure of church, being an important part of teaching manners and respect and kind of them things. I think the church kept us. So I'm on that with Clive. What Clive was talking about, I'm on that. I think in my world, everybody would go to church on a Sunday, no matter what you did, because I do think that structure and that bringing together and that sense of religion, or unifying. I mean, I learned more about religion rather than churches with the Rasta movement, in the Rasta movement, than I did from churches, because it taught it from a Black's perspective. And I think now very, very much church before was taught from a kind of indigenous kind of white perspective, and now we're wiser. So I agree. I think that platform it needs to be brought, because that's what's the missing thing. And it actually in community activism, the church is not as active as maybe it should be external to the church, because some people look at the religion as the building and not the fabrics. It's like, if you don't come in our building, then you're not involved. And I find even on Windrush, I think the churches could be more more active external to the church building.
Exactly.
So, you know, that's how I see it. But I did want to put that over that manners and respect part of the fabric and a part of young people's bringing up is missing, and I think the church is the platform to put it back, but the practitioners in the church need to come out to the community and be part of the community.
I so agree. And I'm glad you said that, because it's one of the things that I was saying today. Even as I said to my daughter, you know, she's going back to Italy next week, and I said, come on, let's give this new baby some gospel. And my daughter said, she's got gospel. And I went, and she went, yes, grandma sings to her, oh, happy day. Do you know what I mean? So, and I'm glad for that. El Waldo, because you were waving.
Maybe it's because I came here at a very early age, and I'm looking at you guys and saying, wow, you know, how together you guys had it. I come from central London. I lived in Islington most of my childhood. Churches wasn't a nice place. Christianity for the English people weren't a nice thing to be.
Yeah, you're right.
You were told, you know, don't answer back, do as you're told. And me going to church on a Sunday with my siblings, we were the only ones there that were black. I rebelled from church from the age of 8, I think. I wanted to play football because there was nothing in church for me. Once I asked, why was there a white Jesus on a cross? Because if he was born in Africa, he couldn't be blonde hair, blue-eyed. And I was told by the priest, he was made in everybody's image. So I said, well, where's my image? And, you know, when you start asking questions and you get silly answers, and then you go and you look back at English religion, and you realize that half the white people in this country, more than half the white people in this country, couldn't read or write because the church didn't want them to. It was a form of knowledge. Now, if they can do that to their own, what are they going to do with people of different colour?
Yeah.
You got to remember, our religion was taken away from us through slavery. You know, I was lucky enough to have an uncle who actually taught me a little bit about Antiguan religion, you know, during slavery, where the mules were arrested and the slaves had to take their slave masters to church on a Sunday. And to get out the sun, they had to sit under the trees, waiting for that to be the church to finish, and then run the slave masters back to their houses, you know, and then go back and work in the fields. But where all the other animals had a rest day, but we as slaves never did. Now that's Christianity, and that's where we get our Christianity from. I'd rather be a pagan. I'd rather be an atheist, because Christianity is in the heart to me. I don't need someone to preach it to me. Sorry, Clive. But, you know, you admire certain people. But now today, I can see where you're coming from. Because me as a child growing up, I never had a black church. It was a church on a corner my parents sent me to, which was a white church. And from me having that discussion with the minister and being told certain things and having looked every time I went to church, I decided to play football. So I joined the boys' brigade. And the only reason I joined the boys' brigade is I could play football. But even that had its place, because then you had to go to church. And then you had to go to church with your friends who were also black, but we didn't fit in because we weren't part of that society. You look at central London, you think that it's vast, but it was no different from a village in the 60s when I came over. All my school friends knew that the teachers, because their parents went to the same school as their teachers. So it was very much a village. And we, as immigrants in 1960, when I started school, we were separate. We were different. So, you know, I look at you guys and think, wow, you know, you had black churches. In central London, we didn't have black churches. I think the first time I went to a sort of gospel church was, what, 64, 65? And I was a bit too much of a militant then to even want to partake. It was too noisy. People jumping up, shouting, screaming. It was just one of those things I wasn't used to. But, you know, that's my story. And I'm blessed that we have got black churches now. But because of my personal introduction into Christianity wasn't a blessed one. So I rather sit on the fence and look in.
And I think that's something to recognize and acknowledge, because I'm not saying my whole experience, for example, was perfect. Otherwise, I'd be still going, if that makes sense. So, but I do believe that those grounds, you know, the grounds that my parents give me and that I still see in my mother today, yeah, is something that I'm learning about. It's an experience, because I've been where, you know, I didn't go. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to know the people. You know what I mean? I thought, you know what I mean? You're not getting me. A minister comes knocking on the door, whether you're Jehovah's Witness or Adventist, and I'm on the defense. I ain't getting in no pool for you. Do you understand what I'm saying? I get
but my parents, excuse me, but my parents taught me the discipline. My parents taught me
and I think that's
to respect people. And that's where I get that from. Listen and allow other people to speak. And like today, I'm listening to you guys, you know, and I think indirectly I've lost a huge chunk of my life because of the history of religion. And that's what I was more interested in later on in life than religion itself. I think what my peers and my parents have taught me about treating other people as you would like to be treated yourself as more inspiration for me, rather than sitting down looking at the Last Supper and it's, where's the black guy? You know, or, you know, going to a church and saying, where's the black Jesus? Now, I've been fortunate enough to work with photographers and artists, because I did repro. And in my field, it was a case of young black intellectual kids who could paint and take photographs couldn't get their stuff reproduced. So I had my own repro company, so I could introduce people like Alvin. His name was Ferris then. Now I think he calls himself someone else, but he was an integral part of me allowing what I can do and I was good at to allow him to express himself. And, you know, he's a well-known artist now. And we've got another one called Clive, Kofi. He was a photographer. And he's the first bloke I see did a black Last Supper with all black people. And it was like, whoa, why wasn't this done through my peers' time? And you could understand why.
But I still, leave it there. Thank you, El Waldo. But I think still we have to live and experience the life that we're living. When I got involved with Windrush, do you know the one thing that, and I kept thinking before, there's something eerie about this. I call Windrush a spiritual experience. So from the day that that lady, Sakina, met me, and we went to Manchester, I'll never forget it. And I sat down with Anthony, and I kept thinking, I have known you from somewhere. And then we went to Westminster, met a lot of people, and I remember seeing these. No, I'm serious. You think I'm joking? I'm serious. These guys know what I'm talking about. And I've met more people from the church, regardless of what church, in the Windrush, right? And I've always said it's part of healing, and I think we're guided and all this kind of stuff. But I hear what you're saying, but I think don't discount your experience, because I think we all ask questions, and if you're like me, you're a rebel. So you've always asked questions throughout life. I used to ask questions all the time. Why can't I go to a disco? because if Jesus was there, he wouldn't want to see you in the disco. And I disagree. So I've always, throughout, even as a child at church, do you know what I mean? But what I'm saying now, in hindsight and with experience, I think it's brought me back to the same thing, that somebody, somewhere, something is trying to tell us something. And I even think Windrush is part of it.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to Glenroy and then Pamela. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Martin. And I don't know if Anita had something, and Julia, if that's right. And then Anthony. Oh, and Mike's got his thumbs up.
Just to
thank
say
you, Mark. Mark saying good night. Good night, Mark.
Oh, good night, Mark. Just to say to Pamela, I mean, the way she described the church, it sounds more like lockdown without Zoom. So, you know, you wouldn't have been able to interact much with anyone. Glenda, you know, I said my wife and I had a discussion the other day as to why we've been together so long, and I've suggested that perhaps we were spirited that had lived before, had encountered before, because I think when you go around and you meet lots of people, you realize that there is a connection. You don't know what it is, and perhaps it's spiritual. Perhaps it's something that is beyond our consciousness, you know? So I like to think that there's ways in which you connect with other people and you see somebody and there is a spiritual bond that you feel you can work with and so on. I think it's much deeper than what you remember. I raised my hand earlier on because I really want to keep pressing this issue about whether religion is the driver or religion actually ensures that you recognize the injustice or help you to recognize the injustice. You think it was unfair before, because you can imagine during enslavement, and you know, we disagree on this, but religion was enforced on enslaved Africans. They were expected to go into church where there would be a pew upstairs somewhere where the white people would congregate and black people were in that lowly position, and people could see that. It was intended to create a oppression so that people will be more obedient and so on. It's unquestionable. I don't know how anyone can see anything else. You might say it's different now. You might say people are more enlightened. You can say those things. I'd probably disagree as well, but it's irrefutable that during the time of enslavement, the only purpose trying to impose religion on African people was oppression. The same thing European did after enslavement, where they went through colonialism. You can read it in doctrines and letters where the vicars, the priests were told by the state how to impose oppression on the enslaved Africans. So it's there, it's unquestionable. I don't see anything Clive has brought to the table to change that position. So, certainly not where I'm concerned, and I don't think where a lot of people are concerned. It is an important historic chapter that Clive has brought to the table, but it doesn't change the reality that we are living in a post-religious oppression, that despite the attempted oppression, people rebelled because that encounter make them see how hypocrisy is being practiced by the enslavers. But we have to also recognize that nearly everyone here has relayed the fact that they were subject to, as children, to go to church. They were forced to, and until they became an age where they said, no, I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to obey that. So that's the basis of that rebellion. But there is another one. I agree with Anthony in that regard. There is another one where people have been brought in the church and allowed ministerial access. And if you think back to enslavement, being refused the opportunity to read and write. So when the opportunity came, you have a greater exposure And that has led you to make sure you even see more clearly the oppression that is going on. So I don't see anything here, with all due respect, Clive, that changed my view around the fact that it was despite engaging in religious teaching and doctrine that so many of our resistant fighters came to the fore. Religion exposed the hypocrisy that European was trying to enforce on them. And the same thing happened on the continent, where that attempt at what is it? The people used to go, slip my mind at the moment, missionary scenario. Yeah, that had that impact again to expose the fact that people are not there. Our people coined the phrase that when the European came, they came with the Bible. They asked us to close our eyes and pray. And when we opened our eyes, they had the land and we had the Bible. So the reality is that many people have seen it historically, how religion has been used as a tool of oppression. But we have to also acknowledge that lots of those people who they tried to oppress did rise up because they understood, in addition to having religious training and religious encounter, that what they were facing was hypocrisy. So it made it easy, I think. And as I said before, despite the attempt to control them from a religious point of view, a lot of rebellion were led by people who were able to understand and expose the religious hypocrisy. Thanks.
Thank you. And I think that's what made me leave the church back those many years ago, because I used to find that it was hypocrisy, which was a big word back in those days in the late 70s. Pamela, and then Julia, and then Odaya. I hope I pronounced your name properly.
Sorry, I'm so sorry about this. This is all short notice for me, and I've been here for several hours. I have to leave.
Oh,
but could
sorry.
I just quickly say something? Is that Mrs. Preston?
Oh, Glenda. I'm Glenda. I should put my name there. I'm Glenda Andrew.
Right. This is a huge topic, and I can see why you gave it 3 hours. It probably need 30 hours. Okay. Very, very quickly, I was brought up in a Seventh-day Adventist background and was practically, I would say, forcefully baptized at the age of 15. From I went under that water and came up, I became a changed person. I realized this was not for me, okay? My grandfather was a preacher. I'm not going to go through all of that, but I went on a search right after I got baptized and grew up, and I went on a search, and I discovered Buddhism and went through that for about 5 years, all right? And there were certain things that I wasn't quite content about. There's I don't know if anyone here has practiced Buddhism. It was very peaceful, very tranquil, and yes, I learned a lot, but I wanted to know what certain things meant. And they thought it not necessary for me to understand what I was actually chanting. All right? Okay, so I left. And I went to the Brahma Kumari Spiritual University for a number of years. Very, very interesting. But I mean, I thought it very, very strange that they didn't believe in having sex. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a married woman. By that time I was married. How would you get children if you're not supposed to, be with your husband? All right. And I thought that was absolutely ludicrous. As I said, I've learned a lot from the Brahma Kumari Spiritual University. And I thought, well, these are all sort of like Eastern religions or practices. And then I went on a journey and I discovered Pan-Africanism. And let me tell you, that was just one of the best. And through Pan-Africanism, I was introduced to the African Hebrew Israelites of Jerusalem. And when I started going to Israel, it was like a breath of fresh air. When I say a breath of fresh air, I just mean being amongst those holistic people. I mean, they didn't live in huge houses, but it was just their spirituality. You understand?
Yes.
Nobody was talking about God. God is a Germanic name. It's got nothing to do with any Africans whatsoever. All right, German is a Germanic word. God of war is all about fighting and all that kind of stuff. It's got nothing to do with African spirituality. Now, you know, lots could be said. I'm trying to speed it up because I really do have to go. You know, but the thing is, I'm telling you, this has got nothing. Black people aren't really racist. Not at all. It's because we were born in abundance. We are loving people, and that's what happened. That's what basically happened. We saw these raggedy looking people come into our you know, I would say planet, because to me Africa is more than a continent, it's a planet. All right, that deceptive little map, we know that that is not true. All right, we know that Russia can fall into Africa, Asia. We don't have to go through all that because I think most of us know this, right? What we need to do is to return to our own Afrocentric spirituality. All right, we need to get back to the drums. The drums will tell you everything. You know, we are discouraged and have been for centuries of keeping our natural hair, because there is significance in the black woolly hair, absolute significance. Whether people want to believe in the Abrahamic religion, you know, calling us Israelites, of which there are 12 tribes, all that kind of stuff, really, right now, it doesn't matter that much. But we have been deprived of our land, our language, our culture, by these really wretched people. And I know there are some white people on here. I didn't choose to be here. I really didn't. And I'm not cursing you per se at all. You understand? But we have the strongest of the strong was taken or sold, whatever term you choose to call it, but we were taken away from Africa. And the first slave ship, as it happens, I think it was about in 1562, by this wretched man calling himself Sir John Hawkins, right? The first ship that left the shores of Mama Africa, right, was called Jesus of Lubeck, all right? And it sailed to Spain, but the Queen Isabella was against slavery. And the ship was mobbed, and they went to Guinea, they went to the West Indies, they went to the Americas, dropping off enslaved kings, queens, noble people, you know, that did not go for the wretched, I would say feeble, went for the strongest, the skilled, drained Africa, right, of all that skills. All right, you know, it's likened to, I would say more than, you know, you remember a few years ago when these children, you know, came from, I think it was Mexico, and they were separated from their parents. You can just imagine. A lot of that happened in Africa, all right? The Council of Nicaea, our people weren't there to make a decision, all right? You know, here you have the Berlin Conference, our people weren't there. So when people are talking about religion, and if you're going to go back to religion, where it does say clearly in Genesis, we call it Bereshit in Hebrew, all right? It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. That's the seventh day of the week. Where did the first day come from? You know, so everything is upside down. Everything is confusing. When it comes to the Europeans, they turn everything upside down. They'd like you to believe that your beautiful chocolate skin is inferior, where it is not. Absolutely not. So, you know, I understand the sister's sentiment.
Oh, I hope you come back.
Sentiments. You know, about going to church, beautiful, because and the greater cake and the drops, beautiful, nice. I really, you know, I can understand that. And my sister, my mouth is literally dribbling, right? You know, but let me tell you, here we are in 2020, and these people have not let up. The Committee of 300, fronted by Bill Gates, wanting to really murder 7.5 billion of the population. How dare they? What do we do now as a people? What do we do? We have built this country. Well, my parents and so some of my granduncles were flying, you know, jets in the Second World War. right? And we know about Windrush, right? They came here as British citizens. You know, I really don't understand how some of these lawyers didn't pick up on the fact that they came here on British passport. Yes, I understand about the naturalization and so on and so on, and some fail to do that. But these people are just users. They are so inhumane, it's crazy that they could think and behave the way they do, and there is no remorse whatsoever. No
Thank
remorse.
you.
You know,
Thank
really,
you.
I'm not being insulting.
No,
I'm
no,
not insulting at all. You know, but I'm just saying my piece because I'm sick.
I know you've got to
of
go.
being sick
Thank
and
you.
tired of
Yeah.
this. Going
We
to
understand.
church is not going to. A church is a gathering, right?
Yeah.
You get. Sorry, but that's it. I'm gone. I'm gone.
It's okay.
Thank you.
But Anthony wants to say something to you, to Adaya, I think, before you.
No, it's all right. She said a lot. I know she has to go. I'm trying to.
I leave my name. I leave my name.
No, Hadaya, please can you
don't
leave
want my
your
name?
email? Please can you leave your email? I hope, because as I said at the beginning, you missed it at the beginning. This is a series. This is a series, and I and many others believe that the church, and I use the church, the black church, as a significant symbol, because I really do believe that it's been forgotten in this Windrush scandal and scenario, the story, because many of us, have family, mothers, aunties, uncles that came here, and for me, when I see my mum today, it's the church or God or her spirituality that keeps her. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate everything that you said.
I do.
Listening to you, sounds very much like me.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. In Hebrew means praise. God is the creator.
One sec.
Leave these names alone.
One at a time.
Where did Jesus come from? Where did Jesus come from?
Well,
that's you know, the Messiah.
Let's do that.
His name was Yeshua.
Let me say something to you. I was just saying that I feel that I'm a bit like you, because you seem to have been on a long journey, but ended up back where you started as a Sabbath keeper.
No, I haven't ended up back where I started.
Well, isn't that what the Hebrew Israelites do?
Not at all. Because if they tell me to turn right, I'm turning left.
No, but you said
it's about the Saturday.
about the Sabbath.
Bereshit, it does say, remember
Adaya, I think he's talking about the Sabbath.
That's what I said. Bereshit, okay, Genesis. I'm sorry, I do get off into Hebrew sometimes.
I know, but can I? Because it's getting late.
I would sooner go for that, Anthony. I would sooner go for that than the Sunday worship.
Right, but that's where you started as a Sabbath keeper, and you've ended up as a Sabbath keeper.
I didn't say I ended up there at all. Not ended up.
Can we? Maybe this is another subject. Keeping the Sabbath.
Yeah,
but I've got views on that.
Also, Glenda, I think, you know, Adaya need to understand. You said 3 hours, but unfortunately, this is the second day, our second time this has been dealt with. So it is a long subject.
Of course it is, and that's why we will come forward and do it. There's many series. Honestly, we will not forget this, and I hope you come, because it will be discussed again in part 3. This is part 2. And we will be discussing the church, Black history, the Black Church, Windrush, in part 3 in a couple of weeks. And maybe you'd be happy to share your story on that too. I'm going to jump to, and please stay, because I'd love your feedback. And if you can't leave it before you go, please post it in the chat room, and we will get back to you. We might not get back to you straight away, but we will definitely get back to you. Pamela.
Okay, right. So I just want to redeem my church. It's not as bad as, you know, it's come across. I'm just saying that it was very, very strict. And, you know, things we weren't allowed to do, I think did sort of hold us back a little bit. But now when I go back to church, the young people are completely in a completely different, you know, way of thinking and way of doing things, and they're much more out there, and they're aware, and they're taking part in lots of stuff. So it has come on. Maybe it was just a product of its time, 60s, 70s that, you know, maybe there was a bit of trepidation from our parents about sort of going out, and from our pastors and so on about what was outside. Whereas I think now it's very, very different. So I'm not saying it was all bad, and actually it did give me some good groundings. I'm just saying it was very, very strict. And, you know, if you had parents like mine who was very, very strict, it did kind of, you know, there were things you didn't know when you finally rebelled and come out where everybody else knew. You were kind of, you know, still sort of locked in that church mode.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. And I think that comes from the awareness of being older. You know,
Yeah.
I remember one of the biggest, I remember when I had my first son, my first child, and I remember them saying about sin. And I didn't get the sin thing. I just couldn't get it. And I said, what are you talking about? It's a sin. How can it be a sin to have a child? And and my auntie slapped my head. You know what I mean? And I never could get it. And I think it's human nature to question. Do you know what I mean? It's like when I went to Italy, when I met my husband, when I went to Italy, a different thing there was I didn't realize that a lot of people, you see, the way we grew up, church, the Bible, we learned to read that Bible. You know what I mean? And then when I went to Italy in Catholicism, they didn't read the Bible. It was all taught. So when I used to say, well, it says in the Bible, and Zia would say, no, it's not that. But then I didn't realize even she, as 80 years old, could not read. And they couldn't write. So I learned something that I think we were privileged because we got to learn from a different perspective. In our church, you were taught scripture. You read script, you memorized it. Anthony is brilliant. Scripture. You know what I mean? My mum loves Anthony because he's scripture. Clive, mum loves you. Scripture. Do you know what I mean? Because you know the Bible. But a lot of people don't know the Bible because they were taught it, because they were taught. And I can't remember who talked about it before. But back then, even in the 60s, in the 50s, women didn't read or was educated in that sense. So things have changed a lot. I'm going to go to Julia. And then, Martin, you've been really quiet. Joan, great to see you.
I've got, sorry, I know, sorry. I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention one thing before I go, because I'm going to another meeting, and I just wanted to put a slot in before I go.
Okay, well, we'll go back after Julia, and I don't think there was anybody else. But Julia next, and then you. And welcome, Joan.
I've signed it halfway through.
Okay, I'm on.
You're on mute.
Okay, there's two things I want to say very quickly then, because other people want to have a chance to say something. And I can remember my son, who is now, for my sins, 38. And when I had my first child in another church in Manchester, after I had the child, before I could be reintroduced back into the church, the sisters of the church, stop it, Glenda, the sisters of the church, if you will, had to what they call de-cleanse me, if you will. And, I had to have a ceremonial bathing and be re-cleansed, and that was a very odd experience, having loads of hands all over me, and I can remember my head being moved rigorously, and it was, I never questioned it. I was quite a very good example of what I believed in at the time, and to a point, I've got to say, I still do. I think subconsciously in my psyche, church is still important to me. And I was grateful for it. And maybe that's why it took me another 6-7 years before I decided to have my second child. I'm not sure. But that was something to do with that. And that was an experience that I've never forgotten. The other thing was, in the church, I was always led to believe, I was fascinated by the members who spoke in tongue. And they, when I questioned my family about that, how is it that I couldn't do it? And they said that was the purest form of worshipping. And I still can't do it. And I like to hear it, and I can't do it. I don't know why. I don't know how. But if I'm in a church, what I call old school, and I see members break into tongue and talking about it, you will see me, the one who's quite fixated, looking at them, because it's not something that I could never connect with. And for a long time in here, I felt maybe I wasn't pure enough. Now, I'd like Clive to answer on that, please, or possibly Anthony, or even indeed Glenroy, because it's something I can't do. I've never been able to do. My dad does. My dad will do it, and I end up washing his feet. And I know it's something, I don't know why, but I just feel that when he's in that mindset and he's doing it, I feel quite grounded. So that's all I have to say. But 2 experiences that I'd like to share with you.
Just a quick one, if I can come in on that, because I'm just conscious of the time as well.
Yeah.
That's a big subject, Julia. Thank you for sharing that. The Bible talks about the gift of tongues in Romans chapter 12, I think it is. And look, the gift of tongues is a gift of the Spirit, as are other gifts of the Spirit that the church, that God has bestowed to the church. And Paul actually in the Bible talks about the gift of tongues as being actually the least of the gifts. And he talks about how certain gifts can be used to be contentious. And he would say, I'd rather speak a couple of words where people can understand rather than speak with an unknown tongue, as it were. But the gift of tongues is a gift of the Spirit, and it is a gift. It is a gift of the church. And what has happened sometimes over the years within the church is that the gift of tongues has become a contentious issue that has divided the church over the years. And yet the Bible is very clear. It is one of many gifts that is bestowed to the believer. And we are encouraged as believers to seek the excellent gift, of, it talks about prophecy, but it talks about the other gifts. There's a gift called the gift of helps in the scripture, which is about the gift of the gift of helping people and supporting, and people have that spiritual gift. So it's important to recognize that there are spiritual gifts. And if you really want it, the Bible says simply pray and ask God for it. And God will even reveal that to you within that regards. So I don't want to say any more on that, because that itself can be another big topic.
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of the time.
I agree with you. Sorry to interrupt you, Clive. And because it's coming up to 11, well, it's after 11.
Mm-hmm.
We always, I just want to say to everybody, thank you so much. There's a few of us that always stay after. We can talk all night. Sam usually says it's not long enough. We do want to just go around the room. If you want to speak first, because you have to go, just give us some feedback briefly, 60 seconds before you leave, especially if this is your first time tonight. There's a lot of people going. Just to say good night, any feedback, or leave your email in the chat room and we will add you to our summary. So Clive, I'm going to start with you because I know it's late.
Well, first of all, I just want to again thank yourself and Anthony, and to everyone who've been on here. I've really enjoyed sharing with you and listening to you. It's been really a fantastic experience. So keep up that good work. just a couple
Will you
of
come
things.
back for part 3?
I will come back for part 3. If
Brilliant.
yeah, I'll come back for part 3, and just to say that, as Claude was saying, for me, the experience of the church was also about me actually meeting other people from different parts of the Caribbean. He talked about islandism, but it was for my experience as well, is that it was a chance to meet people from St. Kitts, from Barbados, from Jamaica, and growing up as well. That was an important experience. I want to say as well, I agree with what somebody mentioned about the importance of, as practitioners, that we need to be part of the community, the church. I agree with what Julia was saying, in that the church has a lot of heritage and history with regards to the songs and what they mean to us. And it's important that we don't lose that. We should really claim them and own those. And sometimes we kind of think, oh, that's old. We say it's old school, but those songs mean so much to us and can explain something and give us a sense of spirituality, which we can't even put into words. So that's something that I'd like us to see, that we as a church continue to claim as well. And all I would say is, Elwado was right in that we weren't told about the history of Black people that is in the Bible. There are Black people spoken of in the Bible, and we're still not taught about that, in terms of Solomon, in terms of Ethiopia and so forth. And all I would say is that God wants to reveal himself personally to people. We've all got different experiences, but there is a real transformation power in a personal experience in knowing God, and that even breaks through the kind of a cultural dimensions that sometimes holds us back. But thank you all very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And I agree on that so much, because I do believe that. I think we've lost the spirituality of things, and I do believe that God, whatever you want to call God to you, reveals itself through your own experiences and your own journey. I'm going to go swiftly to Pamela, just to briefly, in 60 seconds, share, and I hope you come back next week. Pamela?
Yeah, it's been very, very interesting. Great range of opinions, and it's quite interesting to see how many of us have church backgrounds. In fact, 99% of us, I think, or 99, maybe 100% of us actually have that church background. So that's quite interesting. I've learned a lot. I've learned the different opinions of people, and the different way they experienced church in their childhood, so that's been really interesting.
Thank you very much. And as I said before, this is part 2, and I'm looking at 2 weeks from now, part 3.
Right,
okay. Buddy, can you hear me still? Buddy? I don't think Buddy can hear me. Julia?
Yes.
Come on, darling. What your thoughts on this evening in 30 seconds? No, 60 seconds.
Oh, well, I have to say,
epic.
Awesome. I loved what Clive, gave us this evening, and in many ways, it's made me feel more connected, and perhaps I'm more spiritual than I think, because he said the teachings of going out and being able to give. I do a lot of that in my time. Outside of my time, in my own private space, I'm still caring for people, looking out for people, and still being a very strong activist for people's sort of injustices and everything like that. So for me, Clive was very integral to me this evening. In terms of Roy and Anthony, I'd have to say it was very calm.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not the standoff that I thought they would have.
I know.
down. He brought sort of serenity to the whole.
I think they were very respectful of each other and perhaps even very gentlemanly to each other. And I admire that in the two kings. They are very much kings of their craft. And Anthony is very much an historian. And Glenroy himself is up there as if almost in the encyclopedia of stuff, and I love that about them. So that was great. But I think everybody, I mean, even El Waldo, I feel quite sad for him, because not sad for him per se, because I think he's come out of this in his own way, quite a grounded man. But his delivery this evening was quite strong, and I almost feel like I want to put my arms around him to say he's missed out on so much, and whether that was his experience that he was introduced to that wasn't quite right. Maybe this conference meeting that we're having tonight, I hope he feels the love, and big love to you, El Waldo. As for Maria's put some comments in the chat group, and her experiences also, was different to the ones that, say, the majority of us have experienced. But it's interesting how we've all come together and given our testimonies of what our experiences are. And it just goes to show how diverse we are as people from our different backgrounds, whether it be the Caribbean, whether it be, through the different continents or whatever. We've all got our own understanding and what our insights are, and the journey that we still undertake as people. And I think you're never too old to learn something. So for me, it is a spiritual bubble, this, and I learn each week, and thank you for sharing. And it's interesting, I think it was Councillor Seaton who has put to, who was it? Was it to, is it Clive? I think he's now gone, in saying Jah Rastafari. So I've even been at some kind of indoctrination at that, when I've seen a different funeral where they bring the skettle drums, and they do chant and they do sing at somebody's passing. So I've got a broad experience of different things. But great night again. Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, Anthony.
Thank you so much. Colleen, nobody go now because it's getting down, otherwise we're just two of us talking.
Hi, good evening, Wanda.
Hi, sweet.
Hi, it's been an amazing night, and it's been really interesting to hear about the churches. I think I used to go to church as a young girl, about the age of 10, as a Seventh-day Adventist. I stopped going the same time as somebody else, about 8. It goes to the shop and buy me 10p cigarettes. I didn't go to church after that because I didn't like it. But no, it's been a really interesting night. I really enjoyed it. And once again, thanks, Glenda. Thanks, Anthony. See you all next week.
See you next week. See you next week. Thank you, Colleen.
All right, good night. Good night.
Good night. Good night. El Waldo, don't go yet, Colleen. El Waldo.
I'm still here. I'm just washing up. Hang on.
Well, it's been a very interesting evening. Religion is not my forte, unfortunately, from my experience. Unfortunately, I've lived a humble life, so to speak. I think spiritually comes from within. I respect other people as other people, I hope, respect me. And that's my philosophy through life. Treat other people as you like to be treated yourself. But it's been interesting listening. And obviously, me and Anthony, we do have our heads hit together at times. But listening to Clive tonight, I've always had respect for Clive. Religion is a thing that you either have or you don't, in my eye. And those who have, I heavily respect them for their commitment and so forth. But I'm reaching my twilight years now, and life hasn't been too bad apart from Windrush. So thank you again for a lovely evening.
Love you.
And I look forward to hopefully speaking with some of you tomorrow. at the Parliament, House of Parliament, Westminster, Home Office. Sorry. If not, I'll see you all next week.
Brilliant. Is there a link for that before you go, El Waldo? Don't go yet.
Of course, there's a link to that.
Can you put it in the chat, please, for me? Please.
Yeah. Okay, I will do.
Thank you. Fantastic. Joan, have you already gone?
Just went.
Has she already gone?
Yeah.
Martin, I thought I could catch her before. Martin?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
Hey, you've been quiet tonight. What happened?
Well, it's important to listen and to learn. I've learned in life, it's listen and learn. And it is interesting. I'm in politics, and as far as I can see, the reason why the Roman Empire became the Holy Roman Empire was international politics. They wanted to continue to control the world through the then Catholic faith, which then has branched out to all these other subdivisions. But it's politics. And therefore, I know from experience that if a church or a sect of the church says, if you've just had a baby, you now need to cleanse yourself. Okay, and you're able to convince another human being that they need cleansing. That's power. So politics is about the manipulation of people and the expression of power. Can you imagine in the 21st century such a thing could happen? Wow, 20th century, such a thing could still happen. And the power of the church as a theological form of politics is quite remarkable. It is quite remarkable. I'm always astonished the things that other human beings will do in order to adhere to the diktat of a small group of people who control the church, that they belong to.
I think that's another topic of debate.
I know, I realise. But can I also go on to Clive and other academics who I constantly encounter, Anthony, who I constantly encounter? Okay, and I'm always dismayed that, again, kind of, I look at these matters, how often we give up our power to define. You can, of course, be an academic and discuss British history, okay, and be of African heritage. You can do this. But at all times, you remain an African. Therefore, it is impossible, I have to suggest, to speak as if, talk about our people as simply as slave. But I know that my ancestors would never have described themselves as being a slave. And I've said this before. I want to say to Clive and others who are academics, who are brought up in the very British tradition, and are looking at it from a kind of particular way. It's really challenging for the children to, from a psychological point of view, to decode what's actually been said. Because it's a description that we don't relate to, but one of our own is saying, well, yeah, you're a slave. But the person who's saying it is one of the, if I may use the terminology, one of our aristocracy. And if there's something that's about the aristocracy, it's that they are the very best and they uphold the very best of who we are. The very best of who we are would never describe our ancestors as a slave. Never. Despite the fact you may have been taught by English, Scotch or Welsh people that you were, we were absolutely enslaved by force, by brutality, by the absolute cruelty, absolutely. But we never describe ourselves as slaves. We were always, I emphasize, always African. We may have been in the Caribbean, we may have been in the Americas, but we were always African spiritually, remained African. Now, but I realize the challenge for academics here, because of course you're in this very hostile academic environment, And if you appear to be reflecting a cultural perspective, you might not receive funding. You might be shunned by certain others. You might be talked down to by other persons here who want to continue the oppression, psychological oppression of our peoples. And I accept all that, and it is a fact. You know, I accept all that. But I have to urge those who are academic, I have to urge those who are theologians, I have to urge those who have public office, that they play a central role in forming the identity and uphold the psychological robustness of our psychology. And therefore, when interpreting history, we can only interpret history from our lens. Don't pretend to speak from other people's lens, because you'll always be found out. From our lens, we know that we caused our enslavement to be brought to an end because we continuously resisted, and we made it very expensive for them to continue to enslave us. Yep, so we were the cause of the abolition of the enslavement. Yep, but that story has to be told by those who will invite to talk about our history. But it has to be told from our perspective. Being neutral, I'm sorry, is no way to proceed. We have to be clear about our position. But I'll stop there. Well, I've been quiet, but there you are. I've stood up.
Okay.
Oh, it's been a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to have another subject because this is another topic. I have to say, and I know you mean it well, but always remember as well that when people, I believe, convey experience, story, or a presentation, they are coming from there.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So we've got to respect that as well. Do you know what I mean? They're not always, or people are not always going to be of your, I can't think of the word.
It's okay.
What I'm saying is, I believe if I speak, I'm speaking as me, spiritually, physically, me. How you interpret it or think I should be something else, that's for you, not for me. So do you understand what I'm saying? I don't have to put it in academic terms, but I'm talking for others that I am me and I come as me in who I am. But I appreciate what you said, and I love that you're here again. And I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Joan's back, and then we're going to jump to Jen, because I know it's going late, but you know how it can go. Jen, can you hear me? Jen? Unmute. Try to unmute. It's not unmuting. Why won't it unmute? Okay. Oh, okay. I could.
Oh, Joan or Jen. Sorry.
Has someone unmuted you? Okay. We'll come back to you, Joan. Glenroy.
Okay. I thought I was in a different queue. Been a great evening as always, and you're in my calendar. This event is in my calendar. I'll try to attend as much as I can.
What will we say without you now, Glenroy?
I think people have misunderstood my gentleness towards Anthony. It wasn't gentleness, because I think he's getting the idea. So there's no point pushing him. You know, you ease him along. But with comrade like Martin to push him from the other side, you know, I don't need to. But Martin is absolutely on point. We need to change the narrative, you know, because calling our ancestors slave as if it was some sort of cooperative process is very incorrect. Let me put it that way. I don't know if that's another soft approach, but it is simply incorrect. You know, we were never slave. We were enslaved. We had it imposed on us. And that's the distinction that must be made when we talk about that. No one has ever been our master. There have been oppressors. There have been people who are exploiting us. And I think, as Eduardo or Claude has said, they did the same thing to poor European here.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
We're not trying to create, it's not a racist thing to recognize that there were racist exploiters who exploited people in this country, and then add to an element of it because they wanted to try and bring poor white people along, say it was because these people were different, created a whole system, trained people to apply racism. So we have to be very clear about it. And these people, when they did that Monday to Friday to Saturday, maybe some of them went to Seventh-day Adventists, would carry out this thing and then go to church.
Yeah.
So we need to put it in context. Martin is absolutely right. It plays along with a religious doctrine, and when the chance came, as he said, with Rome, oh, things are changing a little bit, we should make this our own. And they simply became Roman Catholic, not because of some sort of conversion on the road to Damascus. It was a political decision. And so is many of the things that affect us. But, you know, the reality is that many of our people have learned within that, and I don't have anything against religion. It was just never for me. My first rebellion was in church. My first rejection of imperialism was in a church school when I realized as a child that they were still trying to give us milk powder and cheese to celebrate the Queen's birthday. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute, I thought we were independent. You know, so many of my experience, good experiences from the church. I'm not here to diss it, but I'm here to put it, as far as I'm concerned, in the proper context, that it was a tool being used, and it was a tool many of our people used against the enslavers. And that's a good thing too. So I agree with Anthony in that regard. It was used. But always, comrade, very good night, and I will certainly put that, continue to be in my calendar. I think the alarm goes off anyway, whether I remember it or not.
Fantastic. And again, thank you so much. And let's move swiftly along. Jen.
Hi.
Hi, Jen.
I just wanted to say that I'm not that interested in religion, but I found this talk really, really interesting. And what Julia and Claude both said about the church being, you know, a sense of community, schooling and family. And I think, like, I also asked in the chat, like, what the churches are like now, because so I'm just quite curious about that. And I went to the church that you mentioned earlier, Glenda, the Ashton Methodist Church in Preston, and there's a really, like, because they'd invited refugees for Christmas dinner, which I thought was really amazing, because I think, you know, I think churches are about showing, like, doing, from what I understand, it's like doing good things. So it was quite momentous. And so I went and I listened to the minister, and he was really amazing, because he said, you know, that Jesus was a refugee. So he made the white congregation think, to try to have empathy with people that are different from themselves. And he was a, you know, quite liberal white minister. And, you know, I think that's relates to another question that I asked earlier, was like, who leads the churches, and what, or when you went to church, who led them, and what were they teaching? Because now I feel like we're quite in general, society in Britain's quite, people are quite egotistical and quite selfish in general. So I'm wondering, like, what do the churches do now? What do they teach? Where are the morals? Like, as a primary school teacher, I really wanted to teach kids, you know, morals, and so it was, yeah.
There's a lot there. Thank you, Jen. There's a lot
And
there.
can I just say something about the, just quickly, in relation to what Glenroy said about the religion creating oppression. And just quickly, it just made me think about my time in Guyana in South America. It was colonized by the British. And the American missionaries came to indigenous villages there. They brought religion, and they brought education. They brought their churches, and they changed people's what do you call it? Their
Perceptions.
The generation of my parents' generation, they would just have a very simple lifestyle. They would fish, and they would grow plantain to make bread. But when the churches came, they taught them to grow vegetables, and yeah, so it kind of brought a sense of dependency on growing vegetables, and not on the more kind of simple food. And also they used to go to church on the Saturdays, and I think it was also a Seventh Adventist church, so they weren't allowed to work on Saturdays. But when of my parents' generation, they would wear just grass skirts, because it was from the land. They lived a very self-sufficient, self-sustainable lifestyle. But with the churches, they were encouraged to be modest and cover up, and wear like very smart clothes and skirts below the knee. And for me, I don't know. I when I was in the village, I used to go just to see what they would do, and it was interesting. But I didn't like. I don't know. I think, yeah, it was interesting, but I'd like to. Yeah, it was interesting, but I agree with what you say, Glenroy. I think it was a way of oppressing people. But I've really enjoyed tonight's talk. Thank you.
Sorry, Joan.
Yeah.
Would you like to? I know you came late, and would you like to just, as quickly as you can, on what you got from tonight?
Yeah, many apologies for being late, and apologies to Clive, because it sounds like a very, very interesting discussion that you triggered, and I wish I'd been there. I've been working late. Very apologies for my rudeness. And my friend Pam's there. Just on the note of religion, I'm not religious. I'm always trying to think about why I'm not religious, but I know that it gave my mum her backbone. It gave her strength, and it still gives her strength. And I often get accosted by her telling me to pray, 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 pray. Why are you not praying? But for some reason, maybe I have a type of prayer, but it's not necessarily the one I was schooled on by my mother. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not really keen on it. But I respect my mum for how much amazing strength it's given her and made her into an epic, inspirational woman. When I was taken, when we went to Grenada when I was a child, they had prayer meetings at their house with my grandmother and my great aunt, and it was incredible to watch, and how everybody came to our house, which was up a hill by a stream. And to me, it seemed like Christmas every day when those prayer meetings happened, which to me was the most beautiful thing about it. That's all. I only wanted to make one additional point, which is unrelated, which is if you can't come to reparations rebellions on Saturday, which is in Brixton at Windrush Square, I've left some notes if you'd like to support
Thank
it.
you.
That's all.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you again. And again, appreciate even just coming, you know, even if it's the last hour, I appreciate that you came and you got something from it. Silver Afro TV in the house. Everybody's been asking about you. What did you get from it this evening? And I'd like to introduce you to Sir Clive Foster, because you don't know him yet, but Mr. Clive Foster.
Good evening, Sir Clive Foster.
And what did you get from tonight, Dave?
I got in there late. I was struggling to get in actually, but I got in there late. But I'm not religious. I'm not really religious. Not as deep as you guys, from what I was listening to, from what I did hear. Was interesting, but I'm going to come to the third one. Just to listen.
Sorry?
I'm going to come to the third one just to listen.
Okay, okay.
And hello, Clive.
Fantastic, brilliant. Glad you came, and I'm glad you got something from it. Sam?
Yes.
We'll come to your joke at the end, but as briefly as you can, what did you get from tonight?
Yeah, same as every week. Intrigue. Can I ask Joan a question?
Is it to whom?
Joan.
Joan?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be a joke or what.
No. I said, Joan is saying you don't pray, dear. Hello?
I don't know.
Right,
Maybe I do somewhere in my heart and soul, but I don't acknowledge it or celebrate it correctly.
Well, I pray, and I pray not late next week.
That's not a joke, though, is it? It's serious.
No. Same as Anthony and Glenroy is a bit quiet tonight, so please step up next week, yeah?
Anything else? Anything else, Sam?
No, just, I love listening, you know what I mean? And that's what I'm here for, to learn. Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Fantastic. I hope they have pronounced this one right, but you look like some singer from the States or something. Olawatusin. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome to Preston Windrush, the conference of Free Talk.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you briefly how you came across to this meeting tonight, what you got from it as quickly as you can, and I hope you join us again in the coming weeks.
Sure, I will. I've been listening to what everybody have been saying. This is my first time of joining, and I really want to understand the message people are sending out. I've been hearing about church. I've been hearing about Jesus. I've been hearing about Africanism. So I'm still listening to know what is happening. I just don't want to say anything, which I don't know. But I'm enjoying what they are saying right now. So maybe next time when the program comes up, I might be able to join to say what I want to say. But for me, I'm not a religious person. I'm not a religious person, and I believe in spirituality. So let's leave it at that. I hope to be there again next time. Thank you.
Well, that's deep.
That was deep.
Yeah, man, that's deep.
Yeah. The funny thing is, Glenda, sorry. You know, the thing is, I'm totally taken in this evening by how so many of us here tonight have expressed that they're not religious per se. Now, for me, You know, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think everybody should have that feeling of confidence to say where they're sitting currently. But my question is this, you know, for those of you who feel that way, at the end of our journey in life, have you done anything about that so that you can be addressed either in a spiritual sense or in a religious sense, that you are going on to another journey? And in a spiritual sense, some people will say we're on different levels. You know, they do believe in something, but they're not too sure what that is, but they have this spiritual feeling about them. And if that's...
No, finish what you're saying. I love it when you talk.
Thanks, Joe. So I'm interested to know what your feelings are, because, or what's your thoughts on that rather than feelings, because I know what mine is, but then that will probably go in the third chapter of this conference. Please, Joe.
I've got a reply.
Yeah.
If no one else wants to say something. My reply is, I think about your question every day, all day, and I think about it also because my mum used to just tell me that you have to, what's going to happen after you die, where are you going to go? And always in my head, because religion was such a huge part of my upbringing, it was huge, to the point that I began to feel that I was being accosted by, you know, if I don't get this right, I'm a dreadful person. But in my head, this is heaven. Live life now, in this moment, for good or for bad. This is the heaven where I am now, where I live now. And what, in terms of good and evil, I don't wait till I go to the afterlife to do good. I try and do the good every day, every second, every minute, even when I'm using foul language. So my heaven is tomorrow, my heaven is next week. My good is not later, it's now. And I know it's the same with you, Julia. Yes. But I try to go, well, this is the heaven I'm striving for, the next second, the next day, the next good purpose is then in the next minute. I may fail, but it is that endeavor, that daily minute by minute endeavor, which is my, if you want to call it, the heaven, the afterlife, that is it there. So when I do die or go or expire, I have endeavored to do everything I can before that deadline. And I'm not sure if I said that correctly, but this is my heaven, even though it feels like hell. And that is, in my world, what religion is about, to endeavor to always do good, regardless of whether there's a threat the other side of going to heaven or hell. Yeah. That's my answer.
Thank you. Can I just go to, I think the last one tonight is Marie and then Mike. And it's funny, isn't it, Mike? Because you're also a minister. So Marie first and then Mike.
I'm not sure what to say. I've said lots of things in the chat. I mean, I think in relation to the question about what's the church has forgotten about Windrush, I'm not quite sure if the church has remembered about anything. I'm not sure what the church is really that involved in community issues. If you compare it to, say, like Martin Luther King was, you know, an activist, there isn't anybody that I can see that kind of emanates that. And they've got people that they're activists within their church and kind of growing that, but I'm not sure what they're actually doing with the community. I think within the churches themselves, they've got their own little communities about who's in the front bench and the back bench and stuff like that, and all those different hierarchies that can exist within that, you know, and I guess I've seen that with my mum. So I'm not sure what, I struggled with that question because it didn't resonate for me. Just the debate was very interesting. It brought up lots of things from my past childhood and things like that. I'm just going to say I totally agreed with everything that Martin said, that Glenroy said, and what Joan said.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's me.
Thank you. I know. Do you know what? I mean, I'm 57. I was born in the church. I've been to so many different churches, met so many different people. So I think for me, it's a life experience. And I think it means something different to everybody. But again, I wanted to say to you, this was talking about the church and not about religion. And I think that's another subject, the difference between church and religion. Mike, this must have been right up your street, my dear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
As quickly as you can, as briefly as you can, before
Yes.
12 o'clock.
Well, actually, I'm not a minister. I was.
Oh, I thought you was. Sorry.
Lay preacher. So.
One of our old school.
I think we're all on a spiritual journey.
I agree.
And I think some of us struggle with what we call borrowed faith. That's the faith that your parents had. And if it's not your own faith, based on your own experience, I think it can come back to bite you. And you can struggle in midlife. But often people come back to faith. I think there's common truths with all the world religions. You know, it's at the end of the day, it's denial of self and putting others first. And if we use that as we went through life, the world will be a better place. Yeah, religion has been used to oppress enslaved people, but it's also been used to free enslaved people. If you think about the communist countries under the Soviet bloc, the people there were really enslaved politically. And the underground church was very much alive and was responsible for the overthrow of some of the dictators like Ceausescu. It was actually, I think, a Hungarian pastor that started the revolution. And you know, so it's a balancing thing. You know, you've got the plus and the minus, as in most things. The biggest way to increase congregations would be to ban Christianity, because if it's banned, people want to do it, and that's. I'll leave it at that. Thank you for a very enlightening, you know. As always, I think this has been the best yet, actually. You know, we got a lot of different viewpoints, and I respect them. You know, I mean, for me, the Bible is a collection of books struggling with the concepts, mankind struggling with the very concept of God, because in Samuel, you'll hear man's interpretation of what God wants him to do is very bloodthirsty. You know, don't leave any children alive, and don't, you know, kill all the women and things like that. And when you move to the New Testament, man's understanding of what God is changes. You know, it's a loving God. God is love. You know, so that's where I'm at. Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
everybody.
thank you very much, and thank you for staying so long. Buddy, can you hear us? Is Buddy still here with us, Glenroy?
I haven't looked because I've lost my overall view. So
okay,
yeah, he's still there.
Okay. I
And
don't know
his
if he's
camera's on, but his mic is off.
okay. If you can find out from him, I just let him know that I hope he can hear us, and I hope he had a good evening. And he's welcome to send us an email. I will put it in the chat, just to get his feedback, so we know how he feels about this evening. I think I've got everybody going on to Anthony. I think he's...
Oh, one thing I should have said, but he's also a preacher.
Oh, is he?
Lived in this country for a number of years, and he was a preacher. He's been through quite an experience in this country. I wish he had been able to speak, because he has a story to tell. especially around the mental health issue and how they use that against him. But he'll log on, I dare say, and I'll try and call him on WhatsApp. If he's
Wonderful. And I hope, and I'm going to ask everyone, as we go into part 3 in a couple of weeks' time, that you all can join. And if anybody wants to share their story or wants to contribute to the evening on looking at the church, the Black Church, Windrush, she's giving the love in her hearts, and Windrush, because again, I really do think, I don't know why, and maybe that's the question, why is the church not visible in this? Especially the Black Church that contributed, impacted, and welcomed and set up so many. Because I know, like for example, when my dad came here in 1961, and he came from the Dominica, and there was as far as I understand it, there was a big family of the Andrew family, and preachers and lay people, and my dad he played the organ, he played a lot of instruments, and they were all musicians. So when they came over to the UK, he was part of another group that started the church in Preston, the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Preston. And I know, and we used to travel all over Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, and whatever. But what I'm trying to say is, without that, from what they got from the Caribbean, the history, do you know what I mean? And I think there have to be some kind of visibility. And I don't see it with the church and Windrush, especially with the Windrush Scandal. So that's the reason, one of the reasons why. Another thing is because it helps me with my mum, and I also connect because of her stance. Because I can see, if I play her now watch this. Back in the day, you played a gospel record, Blessed Assurance, to a reggae track, it was a no-no. Yeah? Couldn't do it. But today, Amazing Grace, reggae version by Sanchez, and I can see my mum giving it. And I just think, so things have changed because she sees the Caribbean Carnival set, that I think that's the real thing, and she sees her spirituality, and she's learning about her spirituality in her 80s, which she didn't have the opportunity when she was in her 20s, 30s, and 40s. So there's so much I want to say. I'm looking forward to part 3, because so far we've got Anthony, got Clive, Glenroy, Julia, Dave, Martin's left, but Pamela, everybody has a story to share, and I think that also helps us to highlight the history of the Windrush generation, their descendants, and I think it leaves a legacy for those descendants coming in, like my granddaughter and your grandchildren coming forward. I really do appreciate it. As I hand over to Anthony, God bless you all. Anthony, and then Sam, your joke. I hope you've not gone.
I think I'm going to be in competition with Sam. I've just found that I'm a member of Joan's church.
Are you?
Yeah, because...
How did you find that out?
By what she said.
Which church?
I concur with everything she said. Because I take my beliefs from my mother. I did go to church. I did listen to what the pastor had to say. And my mum used to say all the time, you know, take your Bible with you and make sure that what he's saying is what's there in the Bible. We've always been brought up to be a bit skeptical as to what pastors or preachers or whoever is talking says. You must be knowing it for yourself. She said that before I was born, she used to sing to me. So I was getting the religion before I was born. So Brenda, you were born into it. It came to me before I was born. I left the church, but the church never left me. It's always been with me, and I was told that church just means called out ones. So called out from where? Called out for what purpose? And so when I see people who I concur with, I just think to myself, oh, that's another called out one. and this is where I get that experience with Windrush, where, Glenda, you were saying that you felt that you've known me from whenever. But again, I had that same feeling that you were a called out one. So for me, when people say they don't see the church in the community, it depends on what spectacles they have on. Because with my spectacles, I see the church everywhere. I see called out ones everywhere in the community doing great work. The church is not a building. It's not people who attend. And you have to get that concept from really studying and understanding. And this is the thing that my mum did with our family. Julia, you said that you went 3 times a day. Is that all? We had it morning worship, evening worship, 6 days a week, and then all day on the Sabbath. So that was our upbringing. And
tuna sandwiches with onions.
and it got to the stage where the teachings and the story was so much inculcated into you that you were actually the flesh of the words that were in the Bible. And what happened with me was that as a teenager, you start growing up and you start noticing girls. And when I started to do that, I decided, oh dear, I don't want to be here. I'll be a hypocrite if I'm there thinking about all these girls. And that was the reason I stopped going. And I think I went back to church twice and got baptized twice. But in the end, I decided that I'm better off not being. I didn't know at the time because I didn't talk to anybody about it. I just decided that it wasn't a good idea to be sat in church and noticing that these hips were broadening all the time.
Not the only one, I'm sure.
So
where all those soul songs came from.
The thing is as well that I because my mum and I had this relationship where we discussed the Bible a lot, we were able to play games with each other. And when I was very young, I think I was about 12, she realized that it was going to be difficult because I came home from school one day and I said to her, Mum, God is the square root of -1. And she said, what? But because she always indulged me and she says, explain to me. So I said, well, the square root of a number is, the number that you need to multiply itself to get the number. So she says, well, if you have -1 times -1, it's plus. How are you going to get the square root of -1? And for those of you who know mathematics, it's an imaginary number. So that was me telling her that I'd understood that God was something that was a concept that was inside your mind. And in growing up, she used to, like you, Glenda, say that you shouldn't go here, you shouldn't go there. And when I wanted to go to the pictures, she would say to me, you can't go to the picture. And I say, why? I says, it doesn't say in the Bible you can't go to the pictures. Because obviously I'd read it. She says it does. I said, where? So she brought out the book of Psalms and said, look, it says there, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, and not standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. If you go to the pictures, you're sitting in the seat of the scornful. So anyway, I said, okay. So a week later, I come back and said, okay, I've been to the pictures. He says, but I told you not to go. You're sitting in the seat of school. And I said, well, I stood up. So again, we just played games with each other and got round it until the last time I remember saying to me that if I ever find myself in hell, if I go to hell, I should find myself a Jamaican and stay close. And I said, why? And she said, because he's going to find a way out. And,
wow.
And I keep that with me.
You better believe that. Yes, you better believe that. Faith be. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. So
Thank
it's
you.
been interesting tonight. Thank you, Anthony. Absolutely brilliant. I've loved tonight. Clive, honestly, I know we had a quick reminder session. On point, as my dad always said, and I think someone mentioned it tonight, about significance. And I don't mean play, but by ear, because I believe spiritually, you can't plan these things. You know, I've said it to Sam forever and many other people. Every day, every moment is for me a reason. We might not understand it or get it, or, you know, I'm not doing it like you or you, but I do believe that spiritually it guides us, whatever you call it. I might not be the same, you know, but I still think I'm the same as my mum. I might not be the same because she's like 30, 40 years ahead of me, but I think we're all on the same page, just doing it differently. I welcome you all in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be asking you, Clive, Anthony, Glenroy, if anybody else wants to contribute, we will be talking about it again. I think history about missionaries would be interesting. And if anybody's got any subjects, email me. Okay. But I wish you all good night. And as usual, before we go, I just want to ask Sam.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that we leave on a positive note.
Yeah, Glenda, yeah, I spoke to Buddy on the phone, so he can hear everything, and he's just having some technical problem with unmuting.
Does he want to speak, did you say?
No, I spoke to him on the WhatsApp. He says okay, but he can hear everything, even though he's having some mute problem, yeah?
Fantastic, and thank you. And Buddy, if you can hear us, if you can put your email in the chat room, and then we can stay in touch, or your contact telephone number on WhatsApp, and I will definitely stay in touch. But again, thank you everybody for coming tonight. And Ola Watson or everybody, if you've not got your email, please send us your email. Sam, is he there?
Yeah. Yes. First of all, I've got some bad news, yeah?
Say that again.
I've got some bad news.
No.
No,
don't need no bad news.
No, there's a big explosion in Oldham, and this man lost all of his left side.
Yeah.
Now he's all right now.
Oh no!
I didn't hear it. I missed it. Did I miss it? Oh God!
This man was caught. What?
Glenroy, did you get it?
Yeah, I was worried about it, but actually, now that you mentioned it, can I tell a joke afterwards?
I just, no, wait. I need, hang on 1 second.
Yeah.
I need Sam to say it again. Just wait 1 second.
Right.
There's a big explosion. All right, Sam, you're going to do it. All right, go on.
Yeah, this man was caught up in this big explosion in Oldham. He lost all of his left side. Now he's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
All right.
What do you call?
Okay.
Oh, go on.
Glenroy said he's got something.
Go on,
Yeah,
Glenroy.
I don't want to take over from you, Sam.
Okay. I like to tell him.
As Anthony told the joke, I thought I'd do one as well.
This is how it goes, Clive. Right?
Baby's
Here
born.
all night.
Yeah, baby's born, and he's got nobody. just a head, yeah. But his dad really loves him, you know, and he looks after him. He carries him everywhere, and he really looks after him. And then when he was 18, he took him down the pub for his first drink, you know, first time he's ever had a beer. And as soon as he tastes the beer, his arm popped out. And then he took another sip, and then his other arm popped out. I said, that's amazing. So he drank the rest of the beer, and the whole of his torso, his legs, everything appeared. So he was so excited, he ran out into the road and got run down.
Oh.
So the bartender looked at the barman. Sorry, I lost the punchline. He says he should have given up on the first body, but never mind. I'll screw that up. Not as equipped as you, Sam. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry about that. I'll come back.
Don't give up.
What do you call it when a vampire has trouble in his house?
What do you call it?
When a vampire has trouble with his house?
Don't know. What do you call it?
A grave problem.
Oh.
I get that one.
Problem.
I get that one. Well, look, honestly, thank you very much, everybody. As I'm trying to get the song to close tonight, have a good night. Have a good week. And thank you so much. It's been really, I think this was epic.
Don't forget the rebellion on the 1st.
Oh, yeah. I really. Do you know what? And closing, because that's another story. I really wish I could come to London, because I think a few organisations actually talking about emancipate. I know they're doing something in Manchester, aren't they, Anthony?
Yeah, I don't know what though.
Okay. Well, a few people have asked me, but it's interesting. Do you know what? Because we're doing this every Tuesday, I would have never have known about it. Oh, no, tell a lie. Last year, because of Windrush, I saw it on YouTube. And I remember the first thing that came in my head, I thought, oh my God, I've never seen so many Rastafarians in the United Kingdom. No, honestly, right? So that was my involvement with doing Windrush. This year, I've had a lot of organisations, not in Preston, not from the Black community, but from other organisations asking about Emancipation Day. Therefore, I've asked a few Black organisations, and nobody was doing anything. So I don't think it's because they're not interested. I just think, do you know what I think? I think it's because they don't know. And this is what I said to Joan earlier. I said, if there's anything that maybe we can do, I don't know if it's online or, you know, to show our support, that we could do something here. And I think I personally would want to find out more about what it is. And Anthony touched on it at the beginning. Glenroy, you touched on it. But I think it's something we don't know. And that's being honest. We don't know what it's about. And personally, so maybe there could be something that you could do nationally, maybe include us in the North. We can connect in some form or another, so that those in the North can understand a bit more about what it's about. Because I'd love to come to London, or
we'll have to find a way virtually to make sure we include everyone, because there are people who are concerned about COVID. But I remember the punchline, by the way. The barman said to the father, that kid should have stopped while he was ahead.
Wow. Okay.
It's even better that time.
I think with that, it's good night to you all. Thank you very much. Okay.
And Martin,
Okay.
before you go,
No,
honestly, thank you for raising the bar for Preston Windrush.
Oh, yes.
You have to share your link
Ah, yes, I should. I
of the
will send
radio
it to you.
and the time
Yeah.
that you're on, so we
Okay.
can join and support as well. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you.
Good night, all.
Bye.
Anthony, spot on, sweet, amazing.
Yeah,
Mike,
well done.
Okay, thank you.
tomorrow.
Thank
Well
you,
done,
Lady
everyone.
D. Thank
Good
you,
night.
Lady D.
Don't be late.
All right.
Don't be late.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Thank you,
Glenda.
Lady.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you,
Thank
Lady
you.
D.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, Joe.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Sam.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, my mum wants to know if you can get us some saltfish
Thursday.
on Thursday. Yeah,
Okay.
but we'll catch you. Glenroy, we have to stay in touch. I know we do week by week. Oh, it's gone. But buddy, bye. Sam.
Is a meeting tomorrow?
Oh, he's there in the background. I just
Is a
saw him
meeting
wink.
tomorrow? Huh?
Say that again.
Is there a meeting tomorrow?
For the Windrush Community Response.
Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah.
Do you know what? I don't know, but I think there's a community. I think there's a Windrush meeting, isn't there?
Yeah, for about the Friday thing.
I'll find.
Let me know tomorrow.
I will. I'll let you know tomorrow. And
Yeah, okay.
Brilliant night. Absolutely.
Okay. All right,
For
then, yeah.
me, this was the best.
Yeah, but those two Titans are a bit quiet tonight. They got to...
God's watching. God's watching.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
listen, fabulous.
Okay.
Sam, you keep saying you want it longer. Do you know what time it is?
I know. Still not long enough.
All right.
I was
God bless
surprised when I saw 11 o'clock. I thought, okay.
All right. Listen, I will speak to you tomorrow. Hey, I've
Okay.
just got an idea. Do you know what I just cooked?
What?
Chicken.
Yeah.
But I did the sweet potato.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you have oh God, what's it called? What are they called? Like done in the oven, potatoes in the
Right.
jackets, but sliced like chunky chips.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just done the sweet potato like that.
Sweet potato chips.
Yeah, but they're chunky. They're like
Yeah,
chunky.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah, but that'll be time consuming, won't it?
No, because you just put.
So okay then. Say this. How many chips would they get? How many chunky chips would they get? Sweet potato.
Oh, you could get a lot. You could get a lot.
With
But
the
anyway,
rice.
it was just an idea. Instead of
Okay.
doing sweet potato boiled, you could
Right.
do them in roasted in the oven in
Okay.
sliced chunks.
Okay. Right. Talk tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good night, everybody. Good night, buddy.